Ever since my classmates found out I was the fake heir, they've been ecstatic. They didn't want to mock me. They were just thrilled to finally see what a poor person looked like. At last, someone could claim the spot for the low-income student grant. My adoptive parents weren't cruel and sharp-tongued like the ones in novels, who would have just thrown me out. When the real heir started with his cold taunts, everyone ignored him and came to ask me about my plans instead. "Since your real son is back, I'll naturally go find my birth parents," I said calmly, taking a sip of hot tea. My adoptive father, Arthur Walton, thought I had been raised well, always handling things decisively and efficiently. But without a blood connection, no amount of grace or competence could compare to being their own flesh and blood. Arthur Walton naturally didn't try to keep me. "The Walton family will give you $500,000. From now on, you're on your own. I will always remember your kindness in raising me." Arthur Walton gave a faint acknowledgement. "When you're packed, have Lewis drive you." I set down my teacup and went upstairs. As I reached the turn of the staircase, I heard Noah's voice from behind me. "Your birth parents are very poor. You won't have space for too much luggage, and you won't have any use for those luxury goods. Don't make a bad first impression." I glanced at the housekeeper, Mrs. Davis, who was waiting nearby, and said coldly, "Throw out everything I don't take with me." Hearing this, Noah froze on the spot. Throw it all away? Those were all limited edition designer items, each one worth a fortune. What was the difference between that and just burning money? I found his words amusing and went straight upstairs, grabbing a small backpack. I packed only my ID and phone, leaving everything else behind, and left the Walton estate without a shred of sentimentality. The car dropped me off at an old, run-down apartment complex. I looked up at the building number, confirmed it was correct, and knocked on the rusty iron door. Through her weathered eyes, I knew instantly that this was my birth mother. I raised a slight smile. "I believe I'm your biological son." Mrs. Hayes froze at my words, and we stared at each other through the iron gate. I asked politely, "May I come in so we can talk?" Mrs. Hayes snapped back to reality and hurriedly opened the gate, ushering me inside. She poured me a glass of warm water, her expression a little reserved. I took it and had a sip, then briefly explained the whole switched-at-birth situation. "Noah is the Waltons' biological son, and I am yours." Mr. and Mrs. Hayes had suspected this might be the case, but seeing their refined and elegant biological son before them, they couldn't help but feel anxious and ill at ease. I had already reviewed the Hayes family's file and had a general understanding of its members. "Is there anything you'd like to ask me?" This felt less like a family reunion and more like a business negotiation. Mrs. Hayes nervously asked what I wanted to eat. A gentle smile touched my lips. "I don't have any particular cravings." Mrs. Hayes stood up and looked at Mr. Hayes. "Well, I'll go to the market. You call Isabella and the others and tell them to come home right away." Hearing the iron gate clang outside, I got up and walked out of the room, coming face to face with my biological sisters. My smile held a hint of warmth. "I'm Ethan." Hearing my deep, pleasant voice, Sophia's heart skipped a beat as she met my gaze in disbelief. "You don't mind how simple our home is?" Sophia felt a little more at ease. "Dad already told me what happened. This is our youngest sister, Mia." When Mrs. Hayes returned from the market, she went straight to the kitchen, seemingly avoiding conversation with me. I sat with Mr. Hayes on the small sofa while the other three sat cross-legged on the floor, making the space feel incredibly cramped. Mr. Hayes let out a heavy sigh. "You've seen the situation here. Our whole family is squeezed into this apartment that's less than 600 square feet. How about I rent an apartment for you and give you a monthly allowance?" I looked at him, my expression calm. "Are you saying I'm not welcome to live at home?" Mr. Hayes quickly explained, "Of course not. We're just afraid you won't be used to it." Having received permission to stay, I seemed to be in a good mood. "If you don't mind, I'll be living here from now on." Sophia suggested getting me a bigger bed, but I said the sofa in the living room would be fine and that I planned to remodel the layout a bit. When Mia heard she would be getting a new desk, she jumped up and down with joy. Mrs. Hayes came out of the kitchen with the dishes. "Dinner is ready." On the table was a delicious fish soup and a plate of large boiled shrimp. Mia's eyes lit up. This was her favorite dish, something she only got to eat on special holidays. As someone accustomed to gourmet delicacies, I wasn't overly impressed by the meal itself, but I could feel the effort the Hayes family had put into it. The awkward atmosphere began to dissipate. I had arrived with nothing but money, so I planned to buy a couple of outfits nearby. Mia volunteered to show me the way, so I took my little sister's hand and we headed out. I used to have clothes selected for me in a private VIP room, so picking them out myself was a new experience. I chose 3 or 4 casual outfits and also bought a pair of sneakers. On the way home, holding my little sister's hand, we passed a small stand selling candied fruit skewers. I noticed her secretly staring at the glass case before maturely looking away, so I bought her a candied strawberry one. With the skewer in her hand, Mia's face was filled with happiness. She grinned and held it up to me. "Brother, you have one too." I paused for a moment, then ruffled her hair. "I don't really like sweets." Mia counted the strawberries on the stick. "There's one for me, Sophia, Isabella, and Mom and Dad. It's perfect." I chuckled in agreement. I led my sister back to the complex and, from a distance, saw Isabella rummaging by the dumpsters. She picked up a doll from a tattered cardboard box. Hearing my footsteps, Isabella frantically hid the doll behind her back. As I walked closer, my expression remained neutral. No need to hide it. I saw everything. Isabella lowered her gaze like a child caught doing something wrong and slowly brought the doll out. "Noah used to love this doll. He had to sleep with it every night. I can't believe he didn't even want this." "This isn't the only thing he abandoned," I said nonchalantly, my words piercing straight through her heart. "Only when you feel the pain can you wake up," I sighed to myself. "If you want it, just take it back." But she tossed the doll back into the box and gave me a bitter smile. The small electric fan whirred noisily in the summer night. Through the poorly insulated old window, I could hear the clamor from the neighbors. Waking up in the middle of the night, I heard voices outside. It was Sophia whispering with our parents. "Ethan probably can't get used to this bed. I heard him tossing and turning all last night. Let's buy him a better mattress. My scholarship money comes in next week. I can pay you back then." The three of them spoke in extremely soft voices, but I heard every word clearly. By the time I had changed and come out, Sophia and my father were already gone. "Where did Dad and Sophia go?" Mrs. Hayes handed me a glass of warm water. "Your sister went back to college early. Your dad is out driving for Uber and dropped her off at the train station on the way. The morning tickets are cheaper." Sophia was clearly trying to save money. A person who was frugal to the extreme was worried I wouldn't sleep comfortably and decisively spent money on a soft mattress for me. A strange feeling stirred within me. Isabella left early for her part-time job, Mia went to play with the neighborhood kids, and Mrs. Hayes went to a local workshop for some piecework, leaving me alone in the house. I got up and opened the door just as Samantha Reed arrived in a flurry with her tools. "Mr. High and Mighty, I haven't even had breakfast." I gave her a tour of the apartment and explained my requirements for the renovation. Samantha's face scrunched up in distress. "A single one of your old mattresses cost more than $20,000, and now you want me to renovate the entire apartment for $2,000? I leaned against the doorframe with my arms crossed and smiled. "If it weren't a challenge, I wouldn't have bothered you." After measuring the entire apartment, she had a rough layout in her mind. We returned to the living room and sat down. Samantha closed her tablet. "So you've really decided to stay here? Got tired of fine dining?" I gave a meaningful smile. "Do you know why the Hayes family went bankrupt back then?" I heard some rumors. They said Sophia offended Olivia Walton's boyfriend while working a part-time job, so Olivia ruined the Hayes family. On the surface, that was the reason, but I know better than anyone that Sophia wasn't the one who caused the bankruptcy. Suddenly, there was a noise outside the door, and Mr. Hayes rushed in. "Weren't you out driving for Uber?" I forgot my phone charger. His gaze fell on the person next to me, finding the young woman somehow familiar. I took the opportunity to introduce her. "This is my friend, Samantha Reed." I asked her to come take a look at the apartment's layout. Mr. Hayes was completely stunned. He had heard of Samantha Reed, a nationally renowned genius designer who had won numerous awards at a young age. Countless people offered her fortunes for her designs, but she rarely accepted. "I won't disturb your work. I'll just grab a cable and go." Afraid of interrupting Samantha, Mr. Hayes grabbed the charging cable and hurried out. We didn't chat much longer. Samantha rushed back to work on the design plans. I gathered my documents and headed out, stopping by the workshop on my way. 7 or 8 women were busy inside, applying labels and chatting. I stood at the doorway and called out, "Mom, I'm heading out to run some errands. I won't be home for lunch." Mrs. Hayes smiled warmly. "Remember to come home early tonight." After navigating the crowded intersection by the market, I saw a black McLaren parked by the roadside. I opened the rear door and got in. The young woman beside me had a gentle expression, and her eyes hadn't left me since she spotted me from a distance. "You're so cruel, Mr. High and Mighty, only telling me about something this huge now." I curved my lips into a slight smile. "Weren't you abroad? What good would it have done to tell you sooner?" Chloe let out a meaningful "oh." "So you're blaming me for not being here and throwing a tantrum?" I was both amused and exasperated. "Where did you learn to talk like a domineering CEO? You didn't contact me for so long. I had to find ways to cheer myself up." She poked my palm with her fingertip. "Stop joking around. Are you getting used to living with the Hayes family?" "Definitely not. I barely slept last night." I leaned on Chloe's shoulder, listening to her gentle, low voice, and instantly felt myself relax. My own voice grew softer. I had Samantha look at the layout. The renovation can start tomorrow. You're as efficient as ever. If you can't sleep well, come over to my place tonight. When she didn't hear a response, she glanced down at me and found I had already fallen fast asleep. She gave a helpless smile and told the driver to turn up the heat. The car was filled with a citrus scent that always made me feel at ease. I slept on Chloe's shoulder for 2 hours. The car had long been parked outside the municipal building. Chloe held my hand gently, waiting patiently for me to fully wake up before accompanying me inside. The process of transferring my legal records was incredibly fast, with Chloe handling all the procedures. Once everything was settled, my official records were transferred to the Hayes family, permanently registered under my father's name. While I was cutting a steak at a high-end restaurant, my phone pinged with a text message. The Waltons had deposited the $500,000 into my account. They think $500,000 is enough to buy your silence? Chloe said, her head down as she cut her steak. Her tone, laced with a cold sneer, was ambiguous. I was never after their money. By accepting this hush money, the Waltons don't have to worry about me spreading rumors, and I don't have to watch my back for them causing trouble. It's a clean break for everyone. Chloe drove me back, parking the car at the same intersection by the market. She ruffled my hair, her eyes filled with a tenderness so deep you could drown in it. Only after I turned and walked into the market did she tell the driver to leave. When I got back to the old apartment complex, Isabella was just getting home from her part-time job. I quickly washed my hands and sat down at the dinner table. I had never had spicy and sour fish stew like this before. The fish was tender, the pickled vegetables were crisp, and the combination of sour, spicy, and savory flavors was incredibly appetizing. It was the most I had eaten in 17 years. I even had 2 bowls of the broth. Mrs. Hayes' face lit up with a smile. I'll learn to make a new dish tomorrow. I called Northwood High today, Isabella said, choosing her words carefully. If you're willing to transfer there, you can take the spot Noah left open. At the mention of Noah, which might upset me, and the topic of transferring schools, Mrs. Hayes lowered her eyes and pressed her lips together. With our financial situation, we really can't afford to keep you at St. Andrews. We're so sorry. I really didn't understand the Hayes family's way of thinking. They felt sorry for me because they were poor, because the apartment was too small, because they couldn't afford an elite private school. What was there to be sorry about? You should fight for what you want yourself. Relying on others, even your own family, will never get you anywhere. That was a lesson I learned with the Waltons. Thank you for looking into the transfer, Isabella, but I'll be staying at St. Andrews. Before Mrs. Hayes could voice her concerns, I knew what she was thinking and raised a hand to stop her. At St. Andrews, the top-ranked student in the grade gets a full tuition waiver. You don't need to feel sorry for me. I'll earn what I need myself, because it's for my own benefit and shouldn't be your burden. Hearing this, Mrs. Hayes' eyes suddenly turned red, shimmering with unshed tears. She fought them back and managed a proud, relieved smile. Isabella composed herself and smiled gently again. Since you have a way to stay at St. Andrews, we'll definitely support your decision. It's not far from Northwood High. I can pick you up after school. After dinner, Isabella went to the kitchen to wash the dishes, and I returned to my room to study. The next morning, after breakfast, the family prepared to leave for work and school. I had called Chloe the night before to borrow a driver, and the car was already waiting at the intersection. After waving goodbye to Mrs. Hayes, the 3 of us siblings walked to the intersection and got in the car. Isabella saw the car we were about to get into. I glanced at the Cadillac logo. I had asked Chloe to send her cheapest car, but who would have thought it would be a brand new Escalade? To Chloe, this was indeed cheap, but compared to the Hayes' old, beat-up sedan, this vehicle was absurdly expensive. Is this your friend's car? Isabella found it incredible that even after leaving the Waltons, I could still have a car at my beck and call. Are you still a Walton heir or not? My expression was calm, not at all flustered, merely resigned to Chloe's arrangements. Mia quietly settled herself in the back seat. Isabella, send me the address of your part-time job. That snapped Isabella out of her daze. The driver started the car smoothly, and I held my phone, sending an iMessage to Chloe. Did you just buy this car? The drive to Northwood High is over an hour. I was worried you'd be uncomfortable sitting for that long. Besides, I can use it for naps sometimes. I looked at the screen and said no more, even though I knew she had bought it specifically for me. After dropping Isabella off at the restaurant, the car smoothly continued on its way, heading directly for St. Andrews Preparatory Academy. I got home in the evening just in time for dinner, and the family gathered around the table, chatting. For the Hayes family, the past few days had felt somewhat surreal. First, the internationally acclaimed designer Samantha Reed had willingly come to renovate their home. They also got to know me, their son, anew, someone who remained poised and unfazed even after returning to a life of poverty. because my confidence never came from the Walton family. It stemmed from my own formidable abilities. After dinner, I took a shower and went to bed early, leaving Mr. and Mrs. Hayes alone in the living room. Mrs. Hayes pressed her lips together in thought for a long time, as if she had finally made a decision. We can't keep underestimating Ethan's connections. We should also take this chance, while we're not yet old, to strive for something more. Mr. Hayes nodded in firm agreement. In the days since Ethan came back, I've been thinking a lot too. For this family to have a better life, we really shouldn't be content with how things are. Driving for Uber is just hard-earned cash. Ultimately, we need to have our own business. Mrs. Hayes sighed, her face clouded with worry. But it's not easy to start a business these days. Mr. Hayes wrapped his arm tightly around his wife's shoulders, his voice firm and resolute. We succeeded once, we can definitely succeed a second time. For now, let's look into the market and do some preliminary research to be safe. The next morning, Mr. Hayes took Mia to school. St. Andrews, the elite private academy I attended, was just across the street from Northwood High where Isabella went, so we decided to take the bus to school together. The bus stop wasn't far from our building, and there were plenty of empty seats when we boarded. Isabella swiped her transit card twice for the fare and guided me to an empty seat in the back. I stared at the transit card attached to her backpack zipper. It was my first time ever riding a public bus and my first time seeing a card like that. It seemed quite convenient. Where do you get a transit card? I'd like to get one to hang on my bag too. Isabella was silent for a few seconds, then unclipped her card and handed it to me. You have to get them at a service center. Here, you can use mine for now. Then how will you get around? You can pay with your phone now. Isabella smiled gently. Seeing how curious I was about the card, she simply gave it to me. I clipped it onto my own backpack. More and more people started boarding the bus. At this time of day, besides students and commuters, there were many elderly people heading to the morning market to get deals on groceries. As the crowd grew, the bus became packed. In the summer heat, the air inside was stuffy and filled with the unpleasant smell of sweat. The old Noah had hated that smell. He absolutely refused to ride a crowded bus. Isabella glanced at her fair-skinned brother beside her. I was sitting quietly by the window, the breeze ruffling my hair, my bright eyes curiously watching the world go by. Isabella thought that her overly mature brother actually had a very cute side to him. The bus driver drove aggressively, as they often do, and to ensure the students weren't late, the trip to the school stop took only 40 minutes. The stop was right at the entrance of Northwood High. Isabella insisted on walking me to my school gate. Since we had plenty of time, we strolled over slowly. Many luxury cars sped past us on the road, and occasionally, someone would roll down a window to shout a greeting to us. Isabella understood then that her brother seemed to have good relationships at school. She had initially worried that once people learned of his identity change, they would gang up on him and give him a hard time. When we reached the impressive gates of St. Andrews, Isabella felt a bit shy about going any further. I'll come get you after school this afternoon. Noticing her slight unease, I smiled and nodded in agreement. A tall figure came running over, and I was knocked slightly off balance by an enthusiastic hug. Leo Carter hugged my shoulders tightly, but his eyes were fixed on my sister beside me. I couldn't help but cough lightly as a reminder. Leo paused for a second before realizing who she was, recognizing her as the second daughter of the Hayes family. He immediately straightened up and adjusted his clothes. I'm Ethan's classmate, Leo Carter, and also his current personal bodyguard. I tilted my head in confusion. Since when did you become my bodyguard? Leo leaned in and whispered in my ear. It was a special request from Miss Lancaster. She's worried people will bully you now that you're the fake heir. After that, he stood straight again, slung an arm around my shoulder, and grinned at Isabella, assuring her, "Don't you worry, sis. I'm a Taekwondo black belt. No one will dare touch a single hair on Ethan's head." Isabella looked at the cheerful, sunny boy in front of her and gave a warm, kind smile. Well then, thank you for looking after Ethan. Leo suddenly felt like the world was in full bloom. He blushed and quickly waved his hands. You should get back to school for your classes, sis. As he watched Isabella's retreating figure, Leo was still smitten. Does your sister have a boyfriend? Would she mind if I became your brother-in-law? I sighed helplessly. Have you forgotten you have a fiancé? You want my sister to be the other woman. At my words, Leo let out a dramatic cry to the heavens. I glanced at the designer watch on my wrist. The bell rings in 15 minutes, and I have no intention of being late with you. I quickened my pace towards the classroom, and Leo hurried to catch up. I heard the Hayes family went bankrupt and is deep in debt, and that you've moved into a rundown apartment building. Can you get used to a place like that? How about I give you that small villa of mine, and I'll even throw in a private driver and a maid. If I were really going to move, it wouldn't be your turn to step up. Leo was not happy to hear that. If Miss Lancaster can give you things, why can't I? I'm your ride-or-die brother. He clung to my arm tightly. I was both exasperated and amused. Since when did this group develop a penchant for charity? Offering luxury cars and villas, complete with drivers and maids, as if my life was so miserable after leaving the Waltons. As we chatted, we arrived at the classroom door. The moment we stepped inside, the once lively room fell silent. Everyone stared at me, their faces frozen in shock. Did I get disfigured or something? You all look like you've seen a ghost. Hearing my familiar teasing, everyone relaxed and burst into laughter. What plastic surgeon would dare touch your face? That thing, it's not actually true, is it? It seems you all know already. I walked back to my seat with a calm demeanor and sat down. When Maya Sterling saw me, she quickly shifted her chair closer and leaned in to whisper, "In our circle, news travels fast. I have an empty condo under my name. It's got to be better than where you're staying now, right? You can use it for the time being." Before I could refuse, Leo slapped his hand on the desk. He wouldn't even take my villa. Maya pouted. She knew she couldn't win against this powerhouse of a guy. The group was joking around so loudly that they didn't even notice when the homeroom teacher, Ms. Peterson, walked in. "What state secrets are you all so excited about? This is the loudest class on the entire floor." Seeing the teacher's stern expression, everyone quickly returned to their seats and fell silent, not daring to make a sound. St. Andrews was a top-tier private academy, and its students were all children of wealthy families. But in many ways, they were no different from ordinary students. They respected strict teachers and feared getting disciplinary action all the same. Outsiders assumed that elite schools were just for coasting by, for students who only knew how to flaunt their wealth and compete over status. The reality was that their academic load was even heavier. In addition to the standard college entrance exam subjects, they also had to study business management, equestrianism, and more. The founder of St. Andrews was a top figure in high society, and the school's code of conduct was extremely strict. Any disrespect towards a teacher would result in severe punishment, not just for the student, but it could even impact their family's business. Since it's the first day of school, I'll let it slide. But this is your final year, so all of you better be smart about it. Don't cause any trouble. Do you hear me? The students shouted in unison. "Yes, ma'am. This semester, we have a new transfer student joining our class. Everyone, please welcome Noah Walton." The expressions on everyone's faces immediately turned strange as their gazes shifted in unison to the front of the room. Leo shot me a look, but I just smiled nonchalantly, my unreadable expression making it seem like I was just there to watch a show. After a few days of intensive etiquette training, Noah had finally started to carry himself with the air of a wealthy heir. He flashed what he considered a perfect smile and gave a slow, deliberate self-introduction. "I'm Noah. I was switched at birth by accident as a child, but now I finally found my real parents. I hope we can all get along well this year." Noah was dressed in a custom-tailored casual suit, affecting a refined and gentle demeanor. Back at his old school, Northwood High, he might have been popular thanks to his status as a Walton heir. But this was St. Andrews, a place full of hidden talents, and his little act was completely transparent. When he finished speaking, the classroom was met with dead silence. Maya, annoyed by his pretentious act, casually remarked with a sneer, "The real Walton heir is certainly one of a kind. The moment he's back with his family, he kicks Ethan out on the street." Noah's eyes flickered at her words, and he habitually switched to his innocent, wronged victim persona. He lowered his gaze as if deeply troubled. "I thought after our parents raised him for 17 years, he wouldn't want to leave them. I never expected him to ask Dad for $500,000 and just walk away without a second glance. I really don't understand how my brother could be so heartless." "How could you be so heartless?" A furious shout echoed through the quiet classroom. Noah turned in alarm to see Leo, his eyes blazing with anger, and me, sitting beside him with a relaxed smile. The teacher, Ms. Peterson, frowned in displeasure, glaring at Leo who had just slammed his hand on the desk. "Sit down right now." Noah suppressed the slight smirk on his lips and fidgeted with the hem of his jacket, looking as if he had been gravely wronged. "My birth parents are struggling financially. The change in lifestyle must be a huge shock for my brother. It's only natural for him to resent me." Ms. Peterson didn't speak up for Noah. This was a school with strict discipline, and it was her job to manage student conduct. The students of St. Andrews were destined to be leaders in their fields, and the teachers here were hardly ordinary. Ms. Peterson saw right through Noah's clumsy act but couldn't be bothered to expose it in front of everyone. She simply reminded him, "St. Andrews is not a place for games. Also, remember to wear your school uniform tomorrow." A wave of mocking snickers rippled through the classroom. Noah nodded awkwardly and quickly stepped down from the front to find an empty seat. A buzz of activity filled the room as everyone started chattering and gossiping. Noah looked around, but his classmates were all discussing business investments, a topic he couldn't understand at all, leaving him feeling completely out of place. Finally, his gaze landed on me in the center of the crowd. What's that thing hanging on his bag? Looks like the former young master has fallen on hard times. He actually has to take the bus to school. That full tuition scholarship the school offers seems pretty useful now. I almost forgot about that. The scholarship and the financial aid spot are all set for Ethan now. I found their comments both helpless and amusing. Just as I was about to get up, Noah spoke up with a righteous expression, scolding them. "You guys are going too far." Everyone looked at Noah, confused. "I know them all very well," I said, my usual easygoing self. "We're just joking around like we always do." It wasn't his place to make a big deal out of it. Leo thought Noah was nuts and didn't want to bother with the real heir. "I know your birth family is poor, and you're used to a life of luxury. You must be miserable back with the Hayes family. I can talk to Mom and Dad, and if you just apologize sincerely, I'm sure they'll let you come back." Noah acted as if he was deeply concerned for me. Most people would see him as simple and kind, while I, the fake heir, would seem ungrateful. But the air around us suddenly fell silent. Everyone stared at Noah without a word, as if they were watching a play, or perhaps a strange new species of animal. After a long moment, Leo turned to me and asked in genuine confusion, "Isn't he embarrassed?" "I'm embarrassed for him." Hearing that, the whole group burst out laughing. "Yeah, that was really awkward to listen to. I'm genuinely trying to help you. The Hayes family is bankrupt. They can't give you a good life. Mom and Dad are actually very kind people. They're just angry right now because you took the money and left without any sentiment. If you just go and apologize to them, they'll definitely let you come back to the Walton family." I just laughed, speechless. I had lived with the Waltons for 17 years. I knew Arthur and Catherine far better than Noah did. They might not even care that much about their own biological son, let alone an adopted one like me. "Samantha Reed is designing a room for me? How come I haven't heard about this?" I raised my lips in a meaningful smile. Noah lowered his eyes, smiling shyly. "I told them they didn't have to, but they said they've wronged me for too long and insisted on compensating me. They were adamant about hiring the best designer to renovate it exactly the way I like." I placed my phone on the desk and put it on speaker. "You've been hiding this well," Samantha's furious voice roared from the phone. "That's complete nonsense. When did I ever agree to design anything for him? Noah, right? I told him to get lost when he called yesterday. Is he deaf or just stupid? He called himself the Walton heir, said he'd pay me to shut up and work, and that the Waltons were a family I couldn't afford to offend. Who wants his dirty money? I don't care if he's a Walton or a Rockefeller. Who does he think he is, ordering me around, spreading rumors and devaluing my work? Can he even afford to compensate me for the damages?" The voice on the phone was sharp and scathing. Leo decisively ended the call and shot me a look, raising his eyebrows as if seeking praise. I smiled and gave him a thumbs up. Everyone present was sharp and perceptive. They all understood the dynamics of their social circle. They came to St. Andrews not just to study, but to build a high-quality network, knowing that these were the people they would be dealing with in the future. Building good relationships with valuable people was beneficial for inheriting their family businesses later on. It didn't matter to them who was real gold and who was fake. What mattered was whether a person had value. As someone who consistently ranked at the top of my grade, I was bound to be a significant figure in the future, making this a prime opportunity for them to connect with me. I might not be a Walton anymore, but if Noah were to be separated from the Walton family, he would be nothing. Initially, no one had anything against Noah. They would have been willing to befriend him out of respect for the Walton family's power. Unfortunately, he was too impatient and even dared to provoke me. They had kept quiet because they couldn't be bothered to expose him or waste time on someone inconsequential. But since Noah insisted on pushing the issue, they couldn't be blamed for being ruthless. The atmosphere became tense and awkward. Noah's face turned ashen, the corners of his eyes red with indignation, making him look helpless and pitiful. While some were willing to stand up for me, others naturally couldn't stand me. Julian Vance rose to his defense. "You guys are going too far. Is it fun to make a fool of someone like this? Noah is just worried about you. The Hayes family is bankrupt, and he only wants to help. Do you have to ostracize him like this?" Everyone looked over, speechless, knowing exactly what Julian was up to. On the surface, Julian looked angry, but inwardly he was thrilled. After all, I had always outshone him in every way. Now that the Hayes family was bankrupt, he could finally feel superior to me. He was posturing, trying to gain the upper hand while also using the opportunity to get on the good side of the real Walton heir, killing two birds with one stone. Noah looked up in surprise, trying to hide his embarrassment, and shot Julian a grateful look. Julian returned a gentle smile, his eyes showing a timely hint of sympathy, as if he truly considered Noah a friend. Just then, There was a knock on the classroom door. Everyone turned in unison to see Chloe Lancaster standing outside, holding a file. What's all the excitement in here? Ignoring Julian's awkward posture completely, Chloe didn't even spare him a glance as she strode directly towards me. I'm just here to drop something off for the young master. Though she said it casually, Julian didn't dare to utter a word of protest. The students in the class were the future heirs of their families, but the woman before them, Chloe Lancaster, was already a figure who stood on equal footing with their parents' generation. Noah secretly sized her up. The young woman was dressed in simple, clean clothes. She had fair skin, a stunningly beautiful face, and an ethereal air about her. On her wrist, she wore a string of deep red prayer beads. As she passed by him, he caught a faint scent of citrus. Noah was deeply shaken. The Hayes family's daughters had once been praised for their beauty, but seeing this young woman, he felt Isabella couldn't compare at all. Still, dressed so simply, she was probably just an errand girl. Noah had no idea that Chloe's simple outfit, along with her understated accessories, especially the prayer beads, was worth more than a mansion in the Hamptons. Maya teased, "What's so important that it required a personal delivery from you, Chloe?" Chloe's gaze fell directly on me, her fondness for me unconcealed. "I'm the young master's personal assistant. Even if it's just a single leaf, I have to deliver it myself." The crowd laughed and started teasing us. But Chloe and I weren't flustered. We remained open and at ease. Everyone in the class knew about our relationship. We were childhood friends who had grown up together, and we both understood each other's feelings. There was nothing to hide. We hadn't made it official only because the time wasn't right, as we both wanted to focus more on our ambitions. Chloe placed the file on my desk, instantly drawing a crowd of amazed onlookers. Everyone gathered around to see what was going on. "This project proposal is beautifully done. When Ethan makes a move, it's always extraordinary. Looks like this year's spot is definitely yours." My proposal scored quite a bit higher. I just smiled without saying a word, my relaxed posture suggesting I was already confident of victory. Noah glanced over and recognized Mia's contribution. "The little Hayes sister made this, right? Using a kid's scribbles for a major project proposal is so disrespectful to the other competitors." Maya shot him a speechless look. "That's a pretty rude thing to say. This proposal was ranked #1 in the evaluation. You call this scribbles?" Noah was instantly silenced. I curved my lips into a smile. "My sister put a lot of heart into this. She made it especially for me. How can your empty theories compare?" My tone was protective. The group complained about my favoritism. "Chloe, you've got to get him under control." Chloe slid her hands into her pockets and leaned over my desk slightly. "It's always been the young master who manages me. What right do I have to manage him?" I couldn't help but chuckle at that, my fingertips brushing against the beads on her wrist. Noah, unwilling to be ignored, stepped forward. "You're not a student here, are you? I understand working to earn money, but..." Chloe narrowed her eyes in confusion. She knew Noah had some issues, but she never imagined he could be this clueless. The entire room fell silent for a moment. Someone had just called Chloe Lancaster an errand girl. It was probably the most absurd joke of the year. Leo was laughing so hard he couldn't stand up straight. "You think Chloe is an errand girl? What makes you think you can even compare to Ethan?" I raised my lips in a speechless smile, retracting my earlier thought that Noah might be clever. He was indeed simple, foolishly so. How could he think that someone who joked around with the children of the elite, someone everyone respectfully called Chloe, could possibly be an ordinary person? Chloe looked down at my hand. "Samantha asked me to pass on a message. The design plans and furniture are all sorted out. She wants to know if it's convenient to start work tomorrow." I lowered my voice slightly. "I'll get back to her later." I then looked up, meeting her deep eyes. "Is the merger and acquisition case handled? You have a flight to catch this week, right?" I immediately let go of her hand and gently nudged her arm. "Then you should get going. Don't miss your flight." "I'll bring you back a souvenir," Chloe said, lightly tipping my chin up. They spoke so softly it was as if an invisible barrier had risen around them. The others instinctively kept their distance, not wanting to intrude, silently enjoying their sweet interaction. Leo rested his chin in his hands, while a question mark seemed to slowly form over Maya's head. "Is it really appropriate for you two to act like no one else is here?" After school, the area around the gate was at its liveliest, with many food vendors setting up shop. Even though St. Andrews was full of rich kids, at this age, they still couldn't resist the allure of street food. Among the bustling crowd, Isabella stood out with her gentle and refined demeanor, like a lady from an ancient noble house. Her eyes seemed to hold a touch of melancholy. I thought if Isabella were to act in a historical drama, she would surely capture the hearts of countless young men. One look at Leo was enough to know. When he saw Isabella, he couldn't even bear to blink. 2 voices called out at once. I followed the sound and saw Noah, a brilliant smile on his face, jogging towards Isabella. Seeing Noah's radiant smile, Isabella's heart was instantly thrown into turmoil. She remembered how he used to run towards her just as excitedly when she went to pick him up from school. She had once adored this younger brother. Right after the Hayes family went bankrupt, nothing had changed between them. They would take the bus home together, and sometimes they would even walk home enthusiastically. Noah would always ask for a piggyback ride halfway, and Isabella would happily carry him. He would lie on her back and say, "My sister is the best sister in the world, and I'm the happiest kid in the world." However, that beautiful memory shattered in an instant. At some point, Noah's smile vanished, replaced by a twisted look of disgust. "I don't want to ride the crowded bus anymore. I've had enough. Give me a piggyback ride. Why are you so useless? You can't even walk a few steps. Why don't you just buy a bike? If you don't have money, go get a job." In the end, he abandoned his favorite sister, the one he once called the best in the world. Isabella swallowed hard, unsure of how to face Noah now. Noah didn't notice her inner conflict and continued to smile sweetly. "I really miss the times we used to go to and from school together. It's a shame I transferred to St. Andrews. The classmates don't seem to like me very much. They only hang out with Ethan." As he spoke, his smile faded, and his eyes began to redden, as if I were the one leading the charge to exclude him, making him feel deeply wronged. Isabella understood the implication in his words. Thinking about her interactions with me over the past few days, a rebuttal almost escaped her lips. "Ethan isn't like that. He wouldn't be so petty. Although I was raised in a wealthy family for 17 years, I was easygoing and generous. I never complained that the Hayes' apartment was too small or that the bed was too hard. I praised Mrs. Hayes' cooking, bought candy for my little sister, and considered my family's needs, offering help where I could. I had behaved so well, in fact, that it made her feel guilty. As his older sister, she felt she couldn't do much to help me. Instead, I was the one taking care of everything." Noah's expression froze instantly. He had assumed that no matter how decisively I left the Waltons, once I returned to the Hayes family and saw their dilapidated apartment, all my spoiled, rich kid temper would come out. But Isabella actually had a good impression of me. It seemed that in just 2 or 3 days, she had already forgotten the brother she had known for 17 years and had accepted me instead. Hearing Isabella defend me, Noah was stunned. I curved my lips into a smile. I had no idea the young Mr. Walton enjoyed claiming sisters wherever he goes. My bright, almond-shaped eyes relaxed, yet they held a sharp, dangerous glint. "Or is it that you just enjoy stealing other people's sisters?" The gloom lifted from Isabella's face, replaced by a gentle smile. She didn't spare Noah another glance. My eyes flickered, and a soft curve formed on my lips. Watching the two of us walk away, a fire of intense jealousy ignited in Noah's eyes. Seeing us talking and laughing, he felt that all of this should have been his. Noah gritted his teeth and clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms, yet he felt no pain. His breathing grew ragged, and only after our figures disappeared from sight did he slowly come back to his senses. He now had everything he had ever wanted. He was enjoying the wealth and luxury of the Walton family. They were just a bunch of poor nobodies. He was the true Walton heir. Seeing the luxurious Walton mansion, the resentment in Noah's heart instantly vanished, and he broke into a triumphant smile. He arrogantly ordered Mrs. Davis, "What are you standing there for? Go make some tea now." Mrs. Davis gave a slight bow. Ever since this young master had returned, whenever Mr. and Mrs. Walton were not home, the staff had to serve him with extreme caution, not even daring to breathe too loudly. The slightest thing that displeased him would result in a tirade of scolding. If the tea wasn't to his liking, he made them remake it. If the food didn't suit his palate, he ordered the chef to cook it again. But the former young master, Ethan, had never lost his temper and had at least respected them as human beings. The current young master, Noah, threw cups and plates at the slightest provocation, as if they weren't staff but slaves he could command at will. Noah's malicious voice rang out again. Mrs. Davis pushed aside her thoughts and quickly brought the tea over. Noah took a sip from the cup, and the next second, he violently threw it at Mrs. Davis. She instinctively took a step back but couldn't dodge in time, and the scalding tea splashed all over the top of her foot. Mrs. Davis kept her head down, secretly rubbing her reddened hand, and immediately knelt to pick up the broken pieces. I'll go make a new cup." The butler witnessed the entire scene. He adjusted his glasses, walked forward elegantly, and said softly, "Young master, it is time for your etiquette lesson." Noah glared at him resentfully. "What etiquette lesson?" The butler's expression remained unchanged. "The family reception is this weekend. Mr. and Mrs. Walton have specifically instructed that you be on time and that no mistakes are to be made at the event." Noah shot to his feet. "What do you mean by that?" "Know your place. You're just a servant paid by the Waltons. Who are you to give me orders? The etiquette teacher was always stern-faced, holding a ruler, and would harshly criticize any mistake without any regard for his status. To be so bold, she clearly had the backing of Arthur and Catherine Walton. The butler bowed his head slightly, his demeanor respectful but firm. The two young mistresses will also be returning for the reception. Noah froze. He had heard that both of the Walton daughters had bad tempers, but regardless, this was his first time meeting his biological sisters, and he knew he had to make a good impression. Once he won over his two sisters, he would be the undisputed son of the Walton family. Then we'd see who dared to look down on him. Noah suppressed his anger and resignedly went to his etiquette lesson. In contrast to the cold atmosphere of the Walton mansion, the small Hayes apartment was filled with warmth. The family huddled together happily, occasionally putting food on each other's plates. The 2 chicken drumsticks were passed around the table. The little ones get the drumsticks, the adults get the wingtips, and the one in the middle gets the flat, Mrs. Hayes said with a smile, giving the chicken flat to Isabella, while Mia and I each got a drumstick. Isabella seemed happier than usual, perhaps because seeing Noah again had brought her a sense of final closure. Looking at the drumstick in my bowl, I felt a rare warmth in my heart. The Waltons were extremely strict about table manners. The seats were spaced far apart, talking during meals was forbidden, and not a single sound was to be made. Serving food to one another was absolutely out of the question. Moreover, Arthur and Catherine were often away, and my 2 sisters had been sent abroad to study, frequently leaving me to eat alone. The Hayes family was completely different. Family members shared the best things with each other, talking and laughing as they ate. Despite being crammed into a tiny apartment, the atmosphere was warm and joyful, filled with the vibrant energy of life. Perhaps this was what a real home felt like. Mrs. Hayes rubbed her hands together, looking a bit embarrassed. With all of you in school and your father driving for Uber, I was thinking of setting up a small stall to do a little business, to help ease the family's burden a bit. I'm thinking of selling some school supplies outside the elementary school, but I don't have much experience, so I'm not sure if I can make it work. Before she got married, she was the pampered daughter of her family, occasionally helping with simple chores but never having to worry about anything else. When she married Mr. Hayes, his business was already doing well, so she became a stay-at-home wife, never having to work for a living. After the Hayes family went bankrupt, she wanted to find a proper job, but Noah complained that there was no one to do the housework, so she stayed home as a full-time homemaker. In reality, being a homemaker was not easy. Her days were filled with tedious physical labor that left her with almost no free time. Seeing her family struggle every day, she had agreed to stay home and manage the household. Now that Ethan was back, everyone was filled with a new sense of determination, wanting to try again. She also wanted to contribute and do her part. Isabella immediately offered her full support. You're cooped up at home doing chores all day with no one to talk to. Setting up a stall is a great idea, something more meaningful. Whether you make money or not, just think of it as a way to get out and relax. Mr. Hayes put down his chopsticks and held his wife's hand tightly. You've worked so hard all these years. For this family, you've never done anything you truly wanted to do. People need to feel a sense of self-worth. If you want to try running a stall, you should go for it. With the full support of her family, Mrs. Hayes let out a quiet sigh of relief and finally turned to look at me, who had been silent the whole time. I thought for a moment and answered seriously, selling school supplies requires a wide variety of inventory, which means higher initial costs. Plus, elementary school students don't have much allowance, so it might take a long time to break even. Near my school, the start and end times are fixed, and the food stalls there do pretty well. You could consider selling some snacks. There are several schools in that area, so you wouldn't lack for customers. The only thing is, setting up in the morning would be hard work. You'd have to wake up very early to prepare fresh ingredients. My point was that I supported the idea. Mrs. Hayes smiled, relieved. I don't mind the hard work, but I only know how to cook simple home-style meals. I wouldn't know how to make any fancy snacks. Your cooking is much better than what you get at restaurants. Besides, we wouldn't be going for fancy. Making something delicious and filling for breakfast would definitely have a market. But as for what to sell specifically, I can't offer much advice. I had never once bought anything from the numerous food carts outside the school, nor had I ever paid attention to what they sold. As the heir of the Walton family, I had to constantly maintain my physique and posture, eat an absolutely healthy diet, and uphold my image at all times. The Waltons stubbornly believed that street food was beneath them, and that being seen as a glutton would tarnish the family's reputation. During my years with the Waltons, I had long since suppressed any desire for food. It got to the point where they, noticing how little I ate, went through chefs one after another. I only later realized my lack of appetite wasn't because of the cooks, but because of the oppressive and cold atmosphere of the Walton household. Isabella thought for a moment. When I was in middle school, There was a cart selling breakfast rice balls by the school gate. They were pretty good. I don't think anyone sells them there anymore. If we sold rice balls, we'd definitely get customers. My parents exchanged a look, seeming to agree that it was a good idea. Then tomorrow, I'll buy the ingredients and we'll do a test run. Your job will be to be my taste testers. Mrs. Hayes had never been so excited. The thought of being able to earn money and contribute to the family filled her with energy. Mr. Hayes brought up a key point. If we're going to sell rice balls, will we need a custom cart? I've seen other food vendors, and most of them have specially made carts where every ingredient has its place. Isabella also remembered. The old cart used a steamer to keep the rice balls warm, but I think we could use a wooden bucket instead, covered tightly with a cloth. The insulation should still be pretty good. Mr. Hayes slapped his thigh excitedly. I'll ask my car buddies tomorrow where we can get one. Let's figure out what fillings to put in the rice balls now, and we'll buy the ingredients for a test run tomorrow. Isabella quickly cleared the table. As everyone gathered and discussed enthusiastically, they would occasionally throw in a funny joke, making the whole family roar with laughter. I was amazed by their efficiency. The entire family was decisive and action-oriented. They had just mentioned setting up a stall, and they were already finalizing the plan, discussing ingredients, and calculating costs. The less a person has, the more courage they often have to take risks and learn from mistakes. And it is often this extraordinary courage that leads them to success. I was completely swept up in the joyful atmosphere. Since I was now a part of this family, I found myself raising my hand and volunteering. I can figure out a way to handle the food cart. The room suddenly fell silent. Everyone turned to look at me in unison, making me feel a little uncomfortable. Mr. Hayes's brow furrowed slightly. I know you might have some savings from your time with the Waltons, but now that you're back with the Hayes family, you are a Hayes. We can discuss family matters together, but there's no reason for a child to be paying for things. That includes asking Samantha to design the apartment. We certainly benefited from your connection, but for any expensive new furniture, Dad will pay you back. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. Perhaps it was because I had never truly experienced familial affection, making it difficult for me to adjust now. I happen to have a friend who works with stainless steel. Maybe we can get a used cart from him for cheap, I quickly added. Only after hearing that did Mr. Hayes nod in agreement. I then took the opportunity to mention that Samantha was bringing workers over tomorrow, so Mrs. Hayes wouldn't be caught by surprise. The family talked until well past 1 in the morning. Since the 3 of us kids had school the next day, we all took turns showering. After my shower, I went back to my room, locked the door, and checked my phone. Samantha had sent me a message. I could see the great designer had done her best. The final bill for materials and furniture didn't even include labor costs. She probably used her own construction team. Samantha never fully trusted outside contractors. Some would rush to meet deadlines, resulting in sloppy work that didn't meet her standards. For high-end interior design, she maintained her own construction team to handle the important parts. Normally, this cost would be included in the client's bill to recoup expenses. But between friends, it wasn't a big deal. I always thought Samantha had a bad temper, but she was incredibly loyal. She always had a reason for yelling at people, like a client with bad taste or someone who was ungrateful. How could that be Samantha's fault? It was clearly the other person's problem. I transferred the amount listed on the invoice. A second later, I received a message from her. That Noah guy is insane. Guess what he said when he called? He actually called me a low-class person. Where does he get that sense of superiority? The monarchy was abolished ages ago, and he's still dividing people into upper and lower classes. He even tried to use the Walton family to intimidate me, saying if I didn't create a design for him, I should wait for the Waltons to blacklist me. How ridiculous. Does he think the Waltons are royalty? I think Catherine and Arthur Walton have completely lost their minds too, kicking me out for his sake. They love keeping score so much. Right after Noah's crazy phone call, an invitation from the Waltons arrived. Should I go and put him in his place? I paused on her last sentence and replied with 2 words. Schoolgate. When Maya mentioned receiving the invitation, her expression was one of pure schadenfreude. Of course, we have to go to the Walton family reception. A show this big? I have to live stream the whole thing for you. Maya knew Leo's temper. You're not planning to crash the party, are you? They could openly show their disdain because they understood the Walton family's situation. Offending them wasn't a big deal anymore. The Walton family had been in business for generations, and their power was not to be underestimated. To openly provoke them at their own reception and embarrass them would have serious consequences for anyone. Leo might not have understood. Why would I need to do anything? Haven't you heard? The 2 Walton heiresses are coming back. He instinctively looked at me, as if seeking confirmation. My eyes flickered. I'm just a high school student from a bankrupt family now. My information isn't as good as yours. Maya raised an eyebrow, her tone teasing. Bankrupt or not, you're still our young master. I stopped and turned around. When the three of us got back to the classroom, we heard Noah's voice. My mom and dad are hosting a reception to introduce me as the Walton heir. I don't have any friends in this circle, so I hope you can all come. Seeing me enter, Noah's smile seemed harmless. There will be a lot of good food at the party, and mom and dad bought me new clothes. You can come and pick out something you like. The clothes you buy would only suit you. Our Ethan doesn't wear hand-me-downs, and he's not desperate for good food. Every time I faced Noah, I could feel my friends' unwavering support. Even though I was no longer a Walton heir, I had plenty of people who had my back. I didn't spare Noah another glance and walked back to my seat. The Waltons' etiquette coach must not be very good. You're supposed to give invitations in advance. A last-minute one doesn't count. I hung my backpack on the side of my desk. He wrung his hands together, looking wronged and aggrieved. I just thought, since your birth family is so poor, you must be having a hard time. I wanted to invite you to the reception. I'm sure mom and dad would agree to let you come back. Always, apologize, apologize. What did Ethan do wrong that he needs to apologize for? Noah immediately fell silent, tears welling up in his eyes, playing the part of a pitiful, innocent victim. He was the one who started it, yet here he was crying as if he were the one being bullied. Julian wouldn't miss this opportunity and immediately stood up for Noah. Noah is just being kind and worrying about you. Why do you have to be so aggressive? Leo sneered. I think he's just crazy. Did he even ask Ethan if he wanted to go back to the Waltons? Does he need to make this hypocritical decision for him? Julian's lips moved. Being from the same circle, he could naturally see through Noah's facade. But he was different from Leo. Leo was unique in their class. His parents were in love, his family was harmonious, and he was the undisputed heir to the family business. Julian, on the other hand, had brothers, and his inheritance wasn't guaranteed. He didn't believe his fate was sealed, so he was looking for a marriage alliance. If he could marry one of the Walton heiresses, his future would be secure. A connection to the Walton family would also earn him more respect within his own. He chose to side with Noah because Noah was naive about their world, and it was precisely this foolishness that made him easier to control. But I couldn't be bothered to get involved. What others planned was none of my business, as long as they didn't mess with me. I knew better than anyone in the room just how complicated the upper-class world was. It was better to avoid trouble and not make enemies everywhere. You never knew if today's outcast might be at the top of the pyramid tomorrow. With that in mind, I spoke up to break the stalemate, partly to prevent Leo from making enemies on my behalf. I looked at Noah and told him two things. First, I have no intention of returning to the Walton family. Second, I have no interest in competing with you for affection. As long as you don't come looking for trouble, we can all get along peacefully. But if you dare to cross my line, we'll see if the Walton family can protect you. Sobbing, Noah heard my words and his heart jolted. He looked up at me in disbelief, meeting my eyes, which were filled with calm confidence. He didn't understand. I showed no signs of dejection, and the people in our class still defended me as always, still treated me with respect. Now I even dared to speak so boldly. Who was giving me this much confidence? What if Chloe wasn't on my side anymore? Seeing Noah staring at me, his eyes full of inquiry, Maya slouched in her seat beside me. With that brain of yours, you'll never figure it out. He didn't know how capable I was. All he knew was that whatever they wanted, things they couldn't get even by begging their families, I could always manage to acquire for them. My network might not compare to the Waltons, but if all our resources were combined, even a family at the top of New York's high society like the Waltons could one day fall. Maya let out a cool, leisurely laugh. To make it in this circle, the first thing you need is to know who you're dealing with. Her tone was laced with mockery. Leo had no desire to lecture Noah. He just wanted to prevent future trouble. For once, he didn't argue with what Maya said. Noah gritted his teeth so hard he nearly shattered them. His eyes, fixed on me, slowly turned red. Finally, he turned and ran out of the room in a rage. Julian called out his name hypocritically. After being ignored, a smirk played on his lips as he said lightly, "If you want to gain someone's trust, you have to do it when their defenses are at their weakest." He looked at me warily. "I don't do things that don't benefit me. You have no value to me." Julian pouted, then slowly walked out of the classroom to chase after Noah. With the two most annoying people gone, the room felt better. Just as expected of someone raised by the Waltons. All he sees is business and profit, with no room for warmth or conscience. Ethan got along with them because they were of a similar age and had known each other for years, a trust built over time. But to me, the Hayes family were just strangers with a blood connection. "How long do you plan on staying with the Hayes family?" Leo was a bit curious about this. With my personality and abilities, it was highly likely I would strike out on my own after leaving the Waltons. Going to the Hayes family now probably meant I had other plans, but I certainly wouldn't stay there forever. Being a minor came with many inconveniences. Once I turned 18, I could open my own accounts and be independent. I wouldn't let anything disrupt that. I wasn't helping the Hayes family for nothing. The renovation was purely because I wanted a more comfortable place to live. This young master couldn't handle hardship, and I couldn't sleep poorly all year. It was also so that when I left, I would feel less indebted to them. Julian stood on the 5th-floor hallway of the school building, watching Noah cry alone behind the rock garden. After waiting for about 20 minutes, Julian slowly made his way down. Just before reaching the rock garden, he messed up his hair, did a couple of high knee exercises, and then ran over, panting, pretending to be anxious. "So this is where you were hiding. I've been looking for you everywhere." Noah looked at Julian in surprise. How could I possibly focus on class? Feeling Julian's concern, Noah was surprised that someone was on his side. All his pent-up grievances burst forth, and tears streamed down his face like broken pearls. "I just wanted to get along with my classmates. I never thought they would be so prejudiced against me." Julian gently patted his back. "That group is always like that. They've always followed Ethan's lead. I can't stand their attitude either, which is why I don't hang out with them. I can be your friend." Noah was so moved that a light appeared in his eyes. He nodded heavily. Okay. Since returning to the Walton family, he hadn't found a single person he could confide in. Mr. and Mrs. Walton were often away. His 2 sisters were still abroad, and besides a bunch of clueless servants, he had no friends at school. Everyone fawned over me, and no one understood his pain. He couldn't exactly talk to a dog, could he? Julian took Noah's hand. "I understand. Going from an ordinary family to a wealthy one, there's so much you have to adapt to. You're under too much pressure. If you're ever unhappy in the future, you can talk to me. I might not be able to help much, but just having someone to listen can make you feel a lot better." Noah squeezed Julian's hand back. "Is the reason everyone in class favors Ethan because of Chloe Lancaster?" Chloe wasn't a student in their class, yet everyone respected her immensely, which suggested some kind of deal between us. The reason I didn't rely on the Walton name was because of my good relationship with Chloe. It was true that part of the reason I could still thrive after being bankrupt was because of her. But Julian didn't know the full story, so he spoke vaguely. "Ethan has known Chloe and Maya for many years. Their relationship isn't based on mutual benefit, especially Chloe. She and Ethan are childhood friends, though they're not officially a couple yet. Just between those two, plus Leo, the undisputed heir of the Carter family, who is as close to Ethan as a brother, even more so than many blood relatives. With those two backing him, who would dare to cross him?" Julian had to admit that Ethan himself was an exceptional person, but he didn't say this last part out loud. So, Noah concluded that my influence was entirely due to the support of Chloe and Leo. "Is the Lancaster family very powerful?" Julian answered his question. "The Lancasters are one of New York's oldest prominent families, with assets and influence comparable to the Waltons. The 2 families have close business ties. However, the heads of the Lancaster family, Chloe's parents, were in a car accident a few years ago and haven't woken up since. Chloe had no choice but to take over early. This isn't a secret in our circles. Chloe is a formidable figure herself. She had just graduated from high school at the time, gave up studying abroad, and took on the vast Lancaster family enterprise. In the past year, she hasn't made a single mistake and has managed everything impeccably. The elders in our community genuinely admire her and respectfully call her young Chairman Lancaster." Listening to Julian's explanation, Noah thoughtfully fiddled with the hem of his clothes. The Walton and Lancaster families were close. If Chloe became his fiancée, then Ethan would have no way of threatening his position. In the old apartment building, Mrs. Hayes was doing a test run of the breakfast rice balls today. There were many ingredients to buy, so Mr. Hayes didn't go out to drive and stayed home to help her. When Mr. Hayes saw Samantha, he was puzzled but quickly stepped aside and respectfully invited her in. Samantha stepped inside and greeted them politely. She glanced at the busy figure in the kitchen and raised her voice. "I'm a friend of Ethan's. I've brought some workers to renovate the room. I hope we're not disturbing you." Mrs. Hayes quickly wiped her hands and came out. "Please, sit down and have some tea." Samantha waved her hand. "No need to be so formal." Ethan said to clear out all the old furniture. "You just need to pack up your clothes and personal items. If you want to keep any of the old furniture, just tell me where to put it, and I'll have my people move it." Mrs. and Mr. Hayes looked at each other, both a bit confused. Mr. Hayes asked, "What do you mean?" Now it was Samantha's turn to be stunned. "Didn't Ethan tell you? He asked me to do a full renovation. All the furniture has been replaced with new pieces." Mr. Hayes's mind was reeling. Replacing all the furniture, how much must that have cost? Mrs. Hayes grabbed her husband's arm, signaling him not to overthink it. What was bought was bought. They shouldn't waste Samantha's time. She quickly took off her apron, placed it on the coffee table, and smiled kindly at Samantha. We can just put the old furniture downstairs. We won't trouble you to clear it out. We have a large truck, so it's easy to haul it away. Otherwise, you'd have to hire someone to move all this furniture, Samantha said quickly. She was impatient and decisive. Mrs. Hayes rubbed her hands together. Then I'll go pack up the master bedroom first. There's less stuff in there, so it'll be easier. Samantha called out to the workers behind her. 3 of you, move the furniture downstairs. 2 of you, go in and strip the wallpaper. The couple packed up their belongings while Samantha supervised the work. Align the edges of the wallpaper better. Are you blind? Why are you leaving such a huge gap? Can't you see the wall is flaking? Don't you know to clean it before applying the paper? Are you planning to grow flowers in there? Handle the corners of the window frame properly. If it's crooked, tear it all off and do it again. Any client in the world hearing this would have their hair stand on end, and their hands would inevitably move faster. The perfectionist designer Samantha Reed truly lived up to her reputation. With the house under renovation, Mr. Hayes sometimes lent a hand, while Mrs. Hayes returned to the kitchen to continue making rice balls. Designer Reed, have some tea, Mrs. Hayes said, bringing her a cup. Samantha was in the middle of scolding someone, hands on her hips. Hearing the voice, her anger instantly subsided. She turned, took the cup with both hands and said, "Thank you, ma'am. You don't have to be so formal. I've known Ethan for many years. You can just call me Sam." Mrs. Hayes found the girl to be quite polite, not as difficult as she might have imagined. "I'm planning to sell rice balls from a stall, and I'm doing a test run at home today. I didn't cook lunch, so if you're hungry, would you like to try some?" Samantha didn't hesitate at all. "Actually, I am a little hungry." A smile spread across Mrs. Hayes's face. She glanced at the busy workers. "Maybe they should take a break too? With so many people, won't it be too much trouble for you?" "Not at all. I was actually hoping to get more opinions." Since Mrs. Hayes insisted, Samantha told everyone to stop working and have a bite to eat before continuing. Mrs. Hayes went to the kitchen and brought out the rice balls. There were several different flavors, and she had cut each one in half so that everyone could try them and offer their feedback. Samantha hadn't even taken a bite yet, but she was already praising the fillings. Most places use frozen ingredients for their rice balls these days. It's rare to see someone using fresh ones like you. After tasting it, she gave a thumbs up. "This is delicious." She showered Mrs. Hayes with compliments, making her feel wonderful. The workers also ate heartily. Afterwards, they went back to work, and Mrs. Hayes asked Samantha to sit down for tea. Sensing she had questions, Samantha sat down. "How did you and Ethan meet?" "He's not that old, but we've known each other for about 10 years now." Mrs. Hayes nodded thoughtfully, then said with some hesitation, "Since Ethan came back, I feel like he's very distant from us. His daily life, could you tell me a little more about him?" Samantha understood then. Ethan was staying with the Hayes family for his own reasons, but they genuinely cared for him. However, having grown up without much affection, he was naturally reserved. Although he acted easygoing, there was still a chasm between him and his real family. Mrs. Hayes wanted to show she cared but didn't know how. Samantha sighed softly. She could tell the Hayes parents were good people. Worried that Ethan might have a hard time, she decided to tell them what she knew. When Ethan was with the Waltons, his adoptive parents didn't pay much attention to him. He was mostly raised by the 2 Walton daughters. But it wasn't a loving upbringing. It was more of a frenemy relationship, a constant battle of wits, which meant he never experienced real warmth and grew up lacking a certain human touch. He had plenty of friends, but that couldn't fill the void left by the lack of family affection. He gradually became composed, with a poise and grace beyond his years, but he lacked the spontaneity typical of someone his age. How could the Walton household be called a home? It was devoid of warmth, as cold as a machine. The 3 children it produced were all incredibly talented, but none of them were mentally sound, and each had extreme flaws. Hearing about the kind of life her son had lived with the Waltons, Mrs. Hayes's heart ached. She had assumed that with all his material needs met, he must have been happy, and that returning to a poor family would be a shock he couldn't accept, creating a rift between them. Only now did she realize that her son had never experienced warmth, which was why he had become so distant. "What does Ethan usually like to eat?" "That I really don't know. I only heard that the Waltons went through chefs constantly. None of them ever lasted more than 6 months. After getting off the bus from school, Isabella and I went to the elementary school to pick up Mia. Many people greeted Isabella when they saw her. "Did your family strike it rich? How come you replaced all your furniture?" Isabella was taken aback by the question and instinctively glanced at her brother beside her. "Weren't we just supposed to be adjusting the layout and adding a desk? Why was all the furniture replaced?" I blinked. It was Samantha's idea. She knows people at the furniture company, so it didn't cost much. I'll just let Samantha take the blame." At that moment, Samantha, who was in the middle of scolding someone again, sneezed. She shivered and thought to herself, "It must be too dusty in here. I should wear a mask next time." When the three of us got home, workers were clearing out trash from the spare room, and two others were replacing the sink in the kitchen. Isabella and Mia were shocked. By the door was a new small shoe rack. It was too narrow to fit a pair of shoes horizontally, but when you pulled it open, you saw that the shoes were stored at an angle. When closed, the angle increased, saving a lot of space. Although the rack wasn't large, it was big enough for the whole family's shoes. Finally, they wouldn't have to be piled under the bed. The old walls were now covered in wallpaper. The worn-out sofa had been replaced with a stain-resistant one, and there was a new matching glass coffee table. The small table in the corner hadn't been thrown out. It still held a vase, now with fresh carnations. The living room window, which used to have curtains, now had clean white blinds, making the space look simpler and brighter. In the sunlight, the warm-toned room felt incredibly cozy. Samantha came out of the spare room, her face lighting up when she saw me. She pulled me over as if seeking praise. "Come see the renovation in here. I guarantee you'll be satisfied." Isabella and Mia followed us in, eager to see how their room had been changed. When they saw the finished result, their jaws dropped in amazement. The overall color scheme was a fresh sea blue. The back half of the room had been raised with wooden planks to create a tatami-style platform with built-in storage. Without the wardrobe, the space felt much larger. It was still a bunk bed, but now the top bunk was horizontal and the bottom one was vertical, with the mattress placed directly on the platform. Beside it, a set of stairs led to the top bunk, much safer than the old vertical ladder. Each step was also a drawer for books and other items. In the other corner, a small desk had been built, with space for both sisters to work without disturbing each other. To transform such a narrow space into something so spacious and beautiful, with all the necessary functions, was truly the mark of a famous interior designer. "This drawer can be removed to serve as a bookshelf," Samantha explained, pulling out one of the drawers under the stairs to reveal a space where books could be stored vertically. She then knocked on the raised platform and looked at Mia. "Your brother said you love to draw. This material is stain-resistant, so you can sit here and paint without worrying about making a mess." Mia's little eyes sparkled. She thanked them excitedly. "Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, brother. I have my own space now. I can draw as much as I want." Seeing the child's radiant smile, Samantha felt a surge of pride. She ruffled Mia's hair, feeling incredibly satisfied. Samantha leaned towards me. "This whole renovation, not including my design fee, cost over $5,000 in materials alone. If I hadn't negotiated my heart out, there's no way it could have been done for $2,000. As expected of the great designer Samantha, no one else could have done it so perfectly." Samantha immediately held her head high. "If your budget hadn't been so low, I would have torn out the floor tiles and redone all the walls too." I turned to her and said, "I'll treat you to dinner sometime." They just released the new Moonlight collection. Meeting her expectant gaze, I nodded. "I'll have it sent to you in a couple of days." I lazily narrowed my eyes. After finishing the final touches, Samantha left with her workers. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes invited her to stay for dinner, and she didn't refuse. After all the outsiders had left, the family discussed what to have for dinner. They had been busy with the renovation all day and hadn't had time to shop or cook, so they decided to take the kids out for a nice meal. Mrs. Hayes took my hand in hers and asked softly, "Ethan, do you like hot pot?" I wasn't used to physical contact with people I didn't know well. After a moment's thought, I didn't pull my hand away and answered her question. "Why do you ask?" The only time I'd had hot pot was the year before last, at a gathering in a restaurant I owned. The food was good, but the prices were probably too high. Wealthy people rarely go out for hot pot, so it closed down after 2 months. I hadn't had it since. Isabella suggested, "Let's go for hot pot then. The place at the intersection is pretty good. Their ingredients are fresh. Our brother had the house renovated for us. We should treat him." The decision was made quickly. After getting ready, the family of 5 walked to the hot pot restaurant. Mrs. Hayes held my hand and didn't want to let go. I felt her attitude was more intimate than usual. Maybe this was how it was between a mother and her biological son. We got a large table at the restaurant. After we sat down, Mr. Hayes handed me the menu and told me to order whatever I liked. I passed the menu to Isabella. "I'm in charge of eating." Everyone laughed, and Isabella started ordering. After dinner, my parents took my little sister home to rest. The streets were brightly lit at night, and you could hear salespeople shouting slogans from the shops. I brought up a random topic. "Why are you still a senior in high school?" The file the Waltons gave me said she was supposed to be in college this year, but she didn't apply and instead repeated a year. Given the Hayes family's current financial situation, no matter what happened, Isabella should have gone to college and graduated as soon as possible, not pulled strings to repeat a year. At the mention of this, Isabella lowered her eyes in silence for a moment, then let out a soft, self-deprecating laugh. She knew I would find out sooner or later, so there was no point in hiding it. Do you know why the Hayes family went bankrupt? I shook my head. It's related to that. Isabella ruffled my hair. The family went bankrupt because someone took revenge on us when our oldest sister, Sophia, was working at a restaurant. At the time, the Hayes family was considered wealthy, but they had only made their fortune in the last decade or so and couldn't compare to the old money families that had been in business for generations. Sophia had watched her family become prosperous, but she never took it for granted and stayed home as a pampered heiress. Instead, she chose to constantly improve herself. She hoped that even without her family's help, she would have the ability to support herself, find her own purpose, and one day help take the family business to new heights. So, starting in high school, she would either enroll in classes or work part-time jobs during long breaks to earn her own spending money. As a result, she unintentionally crossed someone she shouldn't have. Noah always blamed Sophia for the bankruptcy, criticizing her for always going out. Sophia was under a lot of pressure, and Noah would constantly say cruel things to her. Isabella sighed, her mood heavy. Noah's temper got worse and worse, and one time he even got physical with her. I tried to protect Sophia and he pushed me. I hit my head on the wardrobe and ended up with a concussion. It was right before the college entrance exams. Although I was physically fine, I had bouts of nausea and dizziness which caused me to perform poorly on the tests. My parents and teachers all advised me to repeat the year. I listened with my lips pressed together, then asked, "Don't you hate Noah?" Isabella lowered her eyes, dejected. He was the little brother we doted on for 17 years. You don't hold grudges like that in a family. I never thought he would leave so decisively. I understood her self-deprecating smile. 17 years of genuine affection, only to be betrayed in the end. Betrayal of trust is far more painful than any financial loss. Isabella suddenly looked at me, her eyes soft with warmth. "We're a family. We don't need to keep score." She continued, "We're good to you not because we expect anything in return, but simply because you're our family. And we hope that one day, you'll truly accept us as such." I chose the inner bed and pulled the covers over me. The new bed was so comfortable. It was finally not like sleeping on a wooden board. I turned on the small clip-on fan and sat up to call Chloe. The moment the call connected, I heard a low chuckle from the other end. "What can I do for you, young master? Don't tell me you missed me?" "Just bored." Perhaps because I didn't experience much affection as a child, I've always been reserved in expressing my feelings. I had never said words like, "I miss you." If I had something important to discuss, I would say it directly. When I said I was bored and just wanted to chat, it meant I missed her. Chloe's laughter was light and airy, a blush creeping into the corners of her eyes. "So, are we having a 50-cent conversation or a $5 one? You're charging me? For the young master to call me first, I'm definitely the one who's profiting." I couldn't help but smile. "In that case, I'll have to charge by the hour. Let's say $5 an hour. Don't I get a friends and family discount?" Chloe glanced at the time. "How about 500 for 2 hours? I laughed so hard my chest shook. "You really know how to drive a bargain. All the documents have been signed. They'll be sent for notarization tomorrow, and it should be approved in 2 or 3 days. Chloe stopped what she was doing and leaned back in her office chair to talk with me. I gave a distracted hum, and then told her about what had happened that evening. Chloe found it amusing. "Are you scared?" Her question sounded more like a statement, as if she understood my emotions better than I did. "You're afraid of familial affection. I used to long for it. My parents' attention was always on my sisters, focused on their education, while I was always the one who was overlooked. With the Waltons, I had the best of everything, but I also wanted their approval. I studied hard, always ranking first in my grade on every exam, and I attended every extra class they arranged, all for a single word of praise from them. But that hope was always in vain. When I was 8, I understood why my sisters were learning business while I was taking etiquette classes, why they were reading financial reports while I was watching foreign language speeches. I would never be taught about business because I was just a pawn for a marriage alliance. All I needed to do was learn to be docile and eventually become a bargaining chip in a deal. I no longer held any expectations for family affection. As for the care from the Hayes family, I found their actions illogical and racked my brain trying to find some hidden malice, but that was just my own way of avoiding it. I was silent for a long time. Some things are hard to figure out. You deserve to be loved, and you have the strength to face any changes. There's nothing to worry about. Chloe's words brought me a great sense of peace. 2 years ago, when the Hayes family went bankrupt, I also found out I wasn't a Walton. After I told Chloe, she seemed to intentionally stop using my last name. "No matter what your last name is, No matter what happens in the future, I will always be by your side. She was the one who gave me the resolve to leave the Waltons. Her low voice came through the phone. Ethan, you just keep moving forward. I'll always be behind you. You are my ace in the hole, even if it means betting everything I have. Perhaps my warning that day had an effect, because for a while after, Noah attended classes without causing trouble. In the blink of an eye, it was time for the family reception. Seeing Leo at the party, his fiancée, Maya, was surprised. What are you doing here? Aren't you on Ethan's side? I'm here to scout the enemy, Leo said, always ready to defend his friend. Just passing through. Then he answered her question. The two Walton heiresses are back. I have to give Ethan a live feed, don't I? He excitedly pulled out his phone, ready to stream for his friend at a moment's notice. When Maya entered, she scanned the room, her expression grim, and strode purposefully forward. Just as she was about to speak, a voice boomed through the ballroom's sound system from the microphone in Arthur Walton's hand on stage. They looked over to see Noah dressed in a white suit, looking like a pampered young master, his smile elegant, serene, and proud. Leo quickly started a video call with his friend, whispering, "The show's about to start." He panned his phone around, giving a 360-degree view of the ballroom. Guess what your hot-tempered sister has in store for you? It's definitely not going to be anything good. I sat at the desk in my room, the lamplight illuminating my fair face. My bright eyes held a shimmering light, and a faint smile played on my lips. I'm not talking anymore. I'm going to get something to eat. If anything interesting happens, send me a video. Mission accepted. Leo made a gesture to the camera, ended the call, and then opened his camera app, hitting record. He planned to film the entire thing so he wouldn't miss any of the drama. Arthur Walton gave a grand, self-important opening speech on stage, with Catherine standing beside him, her expressions perfectly timed to match his performance, as if they were truly a loving, close-knit family. When he was about done, Arthur handed the microphone to Noah so he could greet everyone. I'm Noah. When I found out that the parents who raised me for 17 years, I was also very surprised. It was a pompous speech, most likely written by a professional for him to memorize. Leo curled his lip in disgust and rolled his eyes. Maya wasn't paying attention to what Noah was saying. Few people in the room cared about how he had lived for the past 17 years or how the Waltons had found him. They were here simply because it was a Walton family event. Whether they had business dealings with them or not, as one of the most powerful families in New York, everyone had to show them respect. She noticed Leo holding up his phone to record, occasionally switching hands when he got tired. She moved closer to him and whispered in his ear. Leo instinctively turned to look at her, then, realizing how close they were, quickly turned back and handed her the phone. Although they were engaged, they had both just come of age. The engagement was a business arrangement made when they were children, and they had always treated each other like buddies, with no romantic feelings involved. At least that's what Leo thought. Seeing him press his lips together and shuffle to the side, Maya's lips curved into a slight smile. Even her tough-as-nails childhood friend could be shy sometimes. Noah had only managed to recite a few lines on stage, and Maya had just taken the phone, when suddenly the roar of a car engine was heard from outside. Although the ballroom was on the ground floor, it was in the innermost part of the hotel. No car sounds should have been audible. Noah's speech was cut short. Everyone looked towards the main doors, confused. With a loud crash, a black Apollo supercar burst through the doors, sending guests screaming and scrambling to get out of the way. The long tables laden with pastries and champagne were overturned, spilling drinks everywhere. The scene was utter chaos. Arthur Walton, who had been playing the part of a benevolent father, stared at the sports car, his face dark. The car screeched to a halt in the middle of the ballroom. A border collie leaped out of the passenger seat and charged towards Noah on the stage. Noah, who was afraid of dogs, screamed in terror and stumbled backward, tripping and falling flat on his back. "Stay away from me," he yelled, flailing his arms and legs wildly. However, everyone else could see clearly that the border collie had stopped about 3 feet away from Noah and hadn't even tried to bite him. The driver's side door of the sports car swung open, and a tall young woman emerged. She was dressed in loose, casual clothes and used a long finger to slide her sunglasses down her nose. She leaned lazily against the car, exuding an air of untamable rebellion. She showed no remorse for having thrown the party into chaos. Her thin lips curved into a lazy, wicked smile. "Little brother, why such a foul mouth? Your big sister was kind enough to bring you a puppy as a welcome gift. If you don't like it, fine, but why be so nasty about it?" There was nothing kind about her actions. It looked more like she had come to deliberately crash the party. She beckoned to the border collie, which obediently ran to her, sat down and wagged its tail. Arthur Walton's face turned pale with anger. "Who gave you permission to drive in here? What is the meaning of this? Take your dog and your car and get out of here immediately." Olivia Walton put the dog back in the car and clicked her tongue twice. Why are you so angry, father? Your daughter has been abroad for 2 years. Didn't you miss me? Now that you have a new son, you don't care about your daughter anymore. Is that it? Don't make me say it a third time. Arthur's tone grew heavier. Olivia, looking completely unbothered, got back in the car, reversed, and drove away. The eldest daughter, Victoria Walton, who had appeared at some point, began to soothe the guests. My sister is immature. I apologize for the fright she gave you all. I have had the adjacent ballroom prepared. Please, follow me. With Victoria stepping in to smooth things over, everyone was willing to give her face, and no one pursued the matter further. Seeing that the show was over, Leo took back his phone, stopped recording, and sent the video. Absolutely spectacular. Noah was taken to a private lounge by his parents, where the atmosphere was so tense he could barely breathe. He wrung his hands together, his voice as faint as a mosquito's buzz, as he tremblingly apologized. I was just scared. I've been afraid of dogs since I was a child. Arthur Walton glared at him, in front of everyone, spouting such filth. You've completely disgraced the Walton family name. Noah's eyes reddened in disbelief. He had been coddled his whole life and had never been scolded so harshly. He looked up, resentful at his own flesh and blood. But it was clearly my sister's fault. Before he could finish, Arthur cut him off coldly. If I had known you were so useless, I never would have brought you back. He didn't understand what he had done wrong. Olivia was the one who caused the trouble, so why was he the one being yelled at? He looked pleadingly at Catherine. They said a mother and son's hearts are connected. Surely his mother would help him. Catherine's face was cold, her expression no better than Arthur's. Her voice was icy. Do you know how many people laughed at us today? If there is a next time, I will send you away myself. Now, go home immediately. Arthur shot Noah one last glare before leaving with his wife to deal with the aftermath. As if all his strength had been drained, Noah collapsed to the floor and let out a self-mocking laugh. No wonder Ethan had left so decisively back then. He hadn't even packed his clothes, just grabbed a backpack with his important documents and was gone from the Walton estate in less than an hour. Catherine brought me back, but I never wanted to come back in the first place. Noah took a deep breath, then got to his feet with a blank expression and walked out like a zombie. Family affection, it wasn't important at all. He now had a life of luxury, living above everyone else. This was all he had ever wanted. Unlike the heavy atmosphere at the Waltons' reception, the Hayes' home was warm and cheerful. For dinner, we had my favorite spicy and sour fish stew, and Mia laughed as she ate. Isabella also had something to share. My classmate's older sister works at a film production company. Short-form series adapted from novels are really popular right now. She said I have a good look and that if I wanted a part-time job, she could recommend me for an acting role. That doesn't sound reliable, does it? The industry is full of shady characters and scams these days. They make you pay a training fee up front, promise to find you work later, and then you never hear from them again. Mr. Hayes used to be a businessman and had heard of plenty of these schemes. Easy jobs like being a fitting model always felt like a scam to him. In truth, Isabella wasn't sure either. After all, there were plenty of elaborate scams out there. I just wanted to get your opinion first. If you're okay with it, I'll go for an interview. If they ask for a training fee, I'll walk right out. I think you should, I said, showing my support. I've always thought you had the face for it. Who knows, you might become a huge star and get discovered by a talent scout. And if she didn't, I could always give her a little push from behind the scenes. The result would be the same. You should give it a try. If you find you enjoy acting, it'll give you another option for the future, I added encouragingly. Isabella laughed. All right, I'll listen to you and give it a shot tomorrow. Ethan, want to come with me? I had nothing better to do at home anyway, so I might as well go out. I told her, let's go after lunch tomorrow. I want to sleep in. Isabella affectionately ruffled my hair. After dinner, I took the kitchen trash to throw out. Worried it might be unsafe at night, Isabella went with me. We went downstairs, threw out the trash, and then leisurely walked to get some bubble tea. Just as we reached the intersection, a sleek sports car sped towards us and came to a smooth stop right in front of us. Seeing the Apollo supercar, I stopped in my tracks. My eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint in them, and the smile on my face vanished. Olivia Walton got out of the car, resting her hands on the roof and staring at me with a smirk. Her first words were sharp. Well, if it isn't my quiet little brother. It's only been a few days since you left the Waltons, and you're already dressed so shabbily. Curled my lip. Isn't the young master at home enough for you to deal with? Did you really come all the way out here just to check on me? So hostile. Your big sister really does care about you, you know? Olivia said, her words devoid of any genuine emotion. She walked around the front of the car to face me, each step casual and rebellious. We haven't seen each other in over a year. I even brought you a special gift." She opened the passenger door, and a border collie jumped out, trotting to her side and sitting down obediently. I hadn't watched the video Leo sent me yet, but I knew Olivia cherished her cars like her own life. This limited edition sports car was covered in countless battle scars. A large patch of paint was scraped off, and there were dried stains from a mixture of drinks. Considering the time, it didn't take a genius to figure out what she had done. Since she hadn't gone anywhere else in between, she must have brought the dog from the reception. Olivia leaned against the passenger door. "My proud little master hasn't changed a bit, still doesn't like secondhand things. But this dog was bought for you. I just took it to put on a little show. You're not going to be that petty, are you?" I sneered and walked towards her, stopping just a half step away. I stared directly into her eyes, my voice calm but laced with ice. "Miss Walton, you really know how to be disgusting, and I happen to hate puppies." It was unclear whether I was referring to the border collie at her feet or the person in front of me. We stared at each other, locked in a standoff. Isabella's presence was like a gentle breeze. Unfazed by the tense atmosphere, she said, "The bubble tea shop is about to close." Olivia seemed to notice Isabella for the first time, her disdainful gaze sweeping over her. "A broke girl from a bankrupt family thinks she's worthy of talking to my brother?" Isabella's expression was calm, showing no hostility. "Ethan is my brother. Whatever issues you have between you, his business is my business." Olivia's laughter was filled with scorn. "You're not worthy of being his sister," I retorted without mercy. "She's not worthy? Then are you?" I bit down hard on the last two words. Olivia didn't get angry. She leaned against the car, a smile on her face. "Well, we did live together for 17 years. I rolled my eyes. "What are you really here for? Can't tell what's real and what's fake." I reacted as if I'd heard a joke. "I live here. You should go home." Olivia looked nonchalant. "If you don't come with me tonight, the next person to come looking for you will be Victoria. You should know, your eldest sister isn't as easygoing as I am." I quickly refuted her. "She is not my sister." I looked down at the soft-furred dog, the border collie that was wagging its tail at me. I bent down, grabbed its collar, and pushed Olivia away from the car. I ignored the troublemaker and turned to Isabella, my expression softening. "Hearing the intimate, sis." Isabella put her arm around my shoulder. "Let's go home." Watching their figures recede, Olivia pulled out her phone and made a call. The moment it connected, she said, "Your brother has a new sister now. He doesn't care about you anymore." Victoria was silent on the other end for a moment before replying nonchalantly, "Then go and get him back yourself." Olivia was furious. She looked at the old apartment complex. "This place is so small and run down. What's there to be attached to? Is he out of his mind? The Walton estate is luxurious enough, but I don't see you coming back very often," Victoria said calmly, completely ignoring her sister's anger. "The reason he's living in a rundown place now is all thanks to you, isn't it? If you hadn't been so reckless and plotted to bankrupt the Hayes family, even if he returned to them, he would still be a young master, wearing designer clothes with a private car to take him everywhere. Why else would their whole family be squeezed into a tiny, dilapidated apartment?" Olivia gritted her teeth. Victoria had encouraged her when she was doing the dirty work, but now that it was all out in the open, she was making her take all the blame. That sister of hers was becoming more and more treacherous. "You'd better keep that attitude. Don't come crying to me when you try to convince Ethan to come back and he ignores you. That'll be a fun show to watch." With that, she hung up. Victoria put down her phone, her fingertips tapping a steady rhythm on the desk. As she thought, her face was expressionless, but she exuded the intimidating aura of someone in power. The manager standing before her desk kept his head down, afraid to say a word and provoke his temperamental boss. My sister and I bought our bubble tea and walked home in the evening breeze, my mood unspoiled by Olivia's appearance. Isabella studied my expression for a moment, then asked casually, "It seems the younger Miss Walton is quite concerned about you. You don't need to test me. I have no intention of going with her. Since I've left the Waltons, I'm not going back. I finally escaped that cage. I'm not foolish enough to jump back into the fire. As for Olivia caring about me, maybe there was a little of it, but I couldn't handle a crazy person's concern. When I was 5, I was still naive and longed for the warmth and protection of a family. When a classmate at preschool bullied me, I went to tattle to Olivia. A normal person would have stood up for their little brother, gone to the school, and dealt with the bully. But Olivia dragged me to Taekwondo practice, saying that if I was good at martial arts, no one would dare to bully me. Then she taught me herself. Facing a 5-year-old beginner, she showed no mercy, breaking one of my ribs and landing me in the hospital for 3 months. During those 3 months, only the servants took care of me. Chloe would come to visit after her classes, but the culprit never once showed her face. When I had recovered and left the hospital, the next time I saw Olivia, she showed no guilt. In fact, she brazenly called me a weakling and suggested I take up kickboxing next. Who would want a sister like that? Meanwhile, Mrs. Hayes's plan to start a food stall was proceeding smoothly. Mr. Hayes cleaned the cart inside and out, preparing for a trial run the next day. The neighborhood was full of familiar faces, making it easy for her to gather feedback and make improvements before the official launch on Monday near Northwood High. Mia raised her bubble tea, and we all clinked our cups together. To Mom's successful business. Mr. Hayes remarked with a sigh, Ethan is our family's lucky star. Everything has been getting better since he arrived. When Noah was here, the days were filled with endless complaints, and a gloomy atmosphere hung over the house, like a machine running on a program. After I came back, I helped the family a lot, like a force pushing everyone forward, making them consider new possibilities in life. The full renovation was also thanks to me. The old, worn-out traces were covered up, giving life a fresh start. Everyone was filled with motivation, working hard in their own ways to make the family's life better. And in doing so, they grew closer together. I lowered my eyes and smiled. I never expected my efforts to be rewarded. If one were to say that the lack of warmth in the Walton household was due to our lack of a blood connection, one only had to look at Victoria and Olivia. Even with Walton blood running through their veins, they had no real affection for their parents. Even Noah, the biological son, probably wouldn't be valued much now that he was back. Blood ties couldn't excuse the Waltons. Arthur and Catherine were simply cold-hearted people. A loveless marriage of convenience had produced 3 cold machines. In a family with unhappy parents, the children are destined to be unhappy too. That was a lesson Leo had taught me. Let's video call Sophia. We can't just become a family of 4 and forget about her, Isabella said. She doesn't know about the renovation yet. Let's make her jealous through the screen, Isabella joked as she started a video call with Sophia. She answered quickly. Sophia had foundation on and was just starting her makeup, getting ready to go out. Isabella teased her. Where are you going all dressed up? You never wear makeup when you come home for breaks. It's so late, don't tell me you have a date. Sophia saw through her teasing. The school's anniversary performance is tomorrow. I'm in a show with my classmates, and we're just doing a makeup trial. Sophia asked, where are you guys? Isabella chuckled, flipped the camera to show the family, and everyone took turns saying hello. Sophia's surprised voice came through the phone. Is that our house? Whenever the renovation came up, Mr. Hayes got particularly excited. It just happened a couple of days ago, and I have great news for you. You know how you used to admire Samantha Reed? She's the one who designed it. For once, Sophia was genuinely thrilled. Samantha Reed had become famous at 16. Back then, the Hayes family still had some money, but they could never have afforded her. After the bankruptcy, she had never dared to dream of it again, even trying to forget it. She never imagined that her dream would now, so quietly, come true. I sipped my bubble tea, chewing on the pearls thoughtfully. So Sophia was a fan of Samantha, even idolized her. Why did she choose to study traditional medicine instead of interior design? I took the phone and stood up. Let me show you our room. I first showed Sophia the living room, then went into the bedroom. A series of amazed gasps came from the phone as I gave her a tour of the newly renovated space. Sophia's face was almost frozen from smiling so much. She absolutely loved the design. Samantha's changes had made the room feel much more spacious, and she adored the light blue color scheme. Sophia had turned into a complete fangirl, exclaiming, as expected of the great designer Samantha Reed. If Samantha heard that, she'd probably be gloating about it for a month. Sophia's brow suddenly furrowed. This renovation must have cost at least $8,000 or $9,000, right? Since Samantha was my friend, she probably didn't charge a design fee, but the materials for the furnishings weren't cheap. $2,000 was nothing more than the cost of a single meal for me. There was no need to put that pressure on my sister. Sophia sighed. As if I knew what she was about to say, I cut her off. Don't you dare feel guilty. I'll be done with graduation matters this month and start my internship next month. I'll treat you all to dinner when I get back. I smiled. Come back soon and try out your custom-designed new room. After a bit more small talk, we hung up. Sophia was still in a daze. She couldn't believe the house had changed so much in just over a week since she'd been back at school. She knew very well that all this good fortune was because of me. Ever since getting the new bed, my sleep quality had improved significantly. I glanced at the caller ID, my expression darkened, and I hung up. The caller was persistent and immediately called back. I waved at Isabella to show her I was fine, then answered the phone, annoyed. What do you want? A discreet, dark green Mercedes was parked outside the complex. Victoria Walton looked out the window at Mrs. Hayes. I'm downstairs. Either you come down and talk to me, or I'll invite this lady into my car. Victoria's voice was cold, and it made the hair on my arms stand up. She must have run into Mrs. Hayes coming back from her stall. I grabbed my keys and ran out the door. I knew Victoria too well. Her methods were vicious and cruel. Mrs. Hayes wouldn't be able to handle her. If she actually got my mother into her car, there was no telling what that lunatic would say to force me back to the Waltons. I quickly put on my shoes and ran downstairs, just in time to meet Mrs. Hayes. I caught my breath, slowed my pace, and put on my usual smile. "You're back from the stall already? How was business this morning?" Mrs. Hayes was very happy. "You'll need to prepare more ingredients for tomorrow. You should go upstairs and rest." Victoria watched our interaction from a distance. Only when she saw me striding towards her did she slowly avert her gaze. The driver immediately started the car and drove off. I reached the entrance and watched the Mercedes drive away, a big question mark forming over my head. I pulled out my phone and called Victoria, my tone harsh. "Didn't you want to talk? I come down and you just leave." Victoria's voice was calm. "I suddenly don't feel like talking anymore. Dinner tomorrow night. I'll pick you up." With that, she hung up. Just as I thought, none of the Waltons were normal. I stared at the disconnected call screen for 2 seconds before tossing my phone onto the bed. Isabella stood at the doorway, her eyes filled with worry. "Who was that?" "A psycho," I said succinctly. "But don't worry, I can handle it." She actually laughed at that, then came over and ruffled my hair. "All right then, get some sleep. Mom's having her first official day at the stall tomorrow, so we all have to get up early." I nodded. After she left, the smile on my face faded. Victoria never did anything without a reason. The fact that she called me today meant she was getting desperate. The lights in the house were on before 5 the next morning. Mrs. Hayes was in the kitchen mixing rice. Mr. Hayes was squatting by the door inspecting the new cart, and a sleepy-eyed Mia stood nearby, clutching a stack of stickers she had drawn the night before. Plump little rice ball characters, all with smiles on their faces. Isabella was yawning, calculating costs in a ledger. I stood by the door watching for a moment and felt a strange warmth spread through my chest. "Why are you up?" Mrs. Hayes quickly urged me. "Go back to sleep. The most important thing for a student is to grow." I couldn't sleep. I walked over and took the container from her hands. "I'll help you pack." Mrs. Hayes paused for a second, then didn't argue, her smile just growing softer. The Hayes' breakfast stall was set up at the intersection between Northwood High and St. Andrews. The foot traffic was heavy, and the location was excellent. It was still dark when Mr. Hayes pushed the cart over. Once the steam started rising, the aroma of the rice balls drifted on the wind, and it wasn't long before a crowd gathered. The first customer was a taxi driver starting his early shift. After 2 bites, he gave a thumbs up. "This pork floss one is delicious. Give me 2 more. Next were a few students from the dorms, who stood by eating and praising the food after they bought it. Soon, even students from St. Andrews were drawn over by the smell. Leo, with his bedhead, was at the front of the line with Maya right behind him. "Ethan, I'm here to boost your mom's sales," he declared, waving his hand grandly. "One of every flavor on the menu." Mrs. Hayes couldn't help but laugh. "Can you even finish all that?" "If I can't, I'll take it to class to share." Leo lowered his voice and winked at me. "I've got it all planned. We're definitely selling out today." Maya held one of Mia's stickers and examined it for a long time. "This little artist is pretty good," she praised. "Have her draw one for me sometime." Mia's ears turned red from the compliment. On their first official day, they sold out of all their ingredients. When Mrs. Hayes got home, her legs were aching and trembling, but her eyes were shining brightly. She held the money she had earned that day, counting it over and over again, as if afraid she had misread the numbers. "We really sold out," she murmured. "I thought we'd have a lot left over on the first day." A rare, relaxed smile appeared on Mr. Hayes' face. "At this rate, if we keep the quality consistent, this will definitely work." I leaned against the doorframe and said, "It won't just work, it can get bigger." Mr. Hayes looked at me, his expression no longer cautious for fear of hurting my pride, but serious. "You have another idea, don't you?" "I do," I said slowly, putting down my backpack. "But tonight, I have to meet someone first." In the evening, Victoria's car arrived outside the complex right on time. She didn't bring a driver today. She was waiting for me in the back seat. The dark green Mercedes, parked in front of the old apartment building, looked completely out of place. I opened the car door and got in, speaking first. "Not going to threaten me with my mother this time?" Victoria didn't even lift her eyelids. "You're already here, aren't you? So you'd better not test my patience." She scoffed lightly. "Your temper hasn't changed a bit. Can't compare to you Waltons." The car was silent for a few seconds before Victoria suddenly turned to look at me. "You're doing well with the Hayes family. Thanks to you all, I'm finally living a normal life." She didn't respond to that, simply telling the driver to take us to a private kitchen restaurant. The private room was quiet. The food was untouched. On the table sat a single manila envelope. Victoria pushed it towards me. Weren't you always curious about why the Hayes family went bankrupt? My fingers paused. I looked up at her. She was finally ready to admit it. Sophia offending someone was just a pretext. The one who really made the move was Olivia, Victoria said. Her tone as calm as if she were discussing a stranger's affairs. 2 years ago, she found out about the switch before anyone else. I didn't speak, gesturing for her to continue. After she discovered your connection to the Hayes family, she became obsessed with preventing you from going back to them. You know how her mind works. The more she cares about something, the tighter she tries to control it. She thought that if the Hayes family was ruined, you wouldn't want to go back even if you knew the truth, Victoria said faintly. So she used the incident with Sophia as an excuse to cut off the Hayes family's line of credit. The room was so quiet that only the soft hum of the air conditioner could be heard. I slowly asked her, "And you?" She looked at me, her gaze unwavering. By the time I found out, it was already too late. So you just helped yourself to the Hayes family's distribution channels and logistics network. Victoria's brow twitched. I smiled. Looks like I guessed right. She didn't deny it, only saying lightly, "In the business world, whoever can take it is the one who has the ability." You make it sound so noble, I said, leaning back in my chair, my voice growing colder. Using a family's livelihood to pave your own way. The Waltons really are good at business. Victoria finally frowned. I didn't come here today to argue with you. Then what did you come for? A crisis of conscience. I came to give you an opportunity. She pushed the envelope further. Inside are some of the transaction records from back then, as well as the instructional emails Olivia sent out. With this, you'll have enough to get some justice for the Hayes family. And the condition? Come back to the Walton family, Victoria said, looking me straight in the eye. Noah can't handle the responsibility. Father and mother have seen that now. Next month, the corporation is bidding for the city's school nutrition program. You know that area best and you're the most skilled at it. If you come back, I can make your past issues disappear, and the Hayes family will be compensated. I had to laugh. Do all of you Waltons think that if you offer a few scraps, people should be eternally grateful? Victoria's expression hardened. Ethan, don't be emotional. You know very well how far you can get in a place like the Hayes family. How far I go has nothing to do with the Waltons, I said, looking at her and enunciating each word. You never wanted me to come home. You just need a useful weapon. She was silent for a moment, then suddenly asked, don't you hate it at all? If it weren't for the switch, you would be the one in the Walton family's position today. What's there to envy about being in that position? I said with a detached expression. Besides, if we're settling scores, I'm more interested in settling the Hayes family's account right now. Victoria stared at me for a long time, as if seeing me for the first time. After a while, she scoffed. You're different from before. I'm just not willing to be your fool anymore. I stood up and took the envelope. Victoria didn't stop me. Only as I reached the door did she speak. I'll give you 3 days. If you blow this up, it won't do anyone any good. I glanced back at her. It'll be pretty good for the Hayes family. When I walked out of the restaurant, Chloe's car was parked by the curb. She rolled down the window, saw the envelope in my hand, and raised an eyebrow. Productive talk? She came to beg me to go back, and threw in the truth as a freebie. Chloe opened the door. Get in. I got in and tossed the envelope to her. She pulled out the documents inside and flipped through a few pages, her expression growing colder by the second. So it really was Olivia. Victoria's hands aren't clean either. Chloe closed the file and reached out to touch my face. Are you angry? I'm all right, I said, leaning my head on her shoulder and closing my eyes. I just really want to crush them. She let out a low laugh. Perfect timing. I have some good news too. Chloe took another file from the side and handed it to me. The equity shares, patent royalties, and project dividends you had me hold for you, the notarization and title confirmations are all complete. As of today, everything is officially in your name. I flipped through the documents and looked up at her. You had this ready for a while? Didn't you teach me that? She tapped the paper with her fingertip. Always have a backup plan. The day you found out about the switch 2 years ago, you started paving your own way. I just helped smooth out the road a bit. I looked at her and suddenly smiled. Then let's play for high stakes. You call the shots. I'll back you up. First, we'll get the Hayes family back on their feet. Then, we'll make the Waltons spit out everything they swallowed. A familiar, sharp glint appeared in Chloe's eyes. Done. For the next 2 weeks, I was incredibly busy. Mrs. Hayes's breakfast stall became a huge success. With rice balls, sandwiches, and freshly ground soy milk, plus the low-fat chicken breast flavor and red bean barley drink that Sophia helped develop on weekends, business got better every day. Mia's little rice ball drawings became the logo. Samantha, despite her complaints, personally designed the visual identity for the cart. The once inconspicuous pushcart was now much more efficient after she reorganized the workflow, even down to the placement of the ingredient containers. Mr. Hayes spent his days securing supply channels and his nights researching insulated containers and delivery routes. Eventually, he even brought back 2 old colleagues he knew and started thinking about renting a small warehouse. Things were going well for Isabella too. I went with her to her audition, and the director took one look at her and cast her on the spot for a significant supporting role in a historical drama. She herself was surprised at how smoothly it went. On the way home, she was still in a daze. "They really cast me?" I said with a calm expression. "Did you think I was just flattering you?" She laughed and reached out to pinch my cheek. "Ethan, how are you so good at predicting everything? Maybe I just have good judgment." She looked at me, her smile softening. "Well then, have you predicted whether I'll become famous?" "You will," I answered without hesitation. "It would be hard not to." She smiled so wide her eyes curved, as if she finally dared to believe that her own life could move forward. At school, I turned the Hayes' breakfast stall into a complete project proposal and submitted it to St. Andrew's Innovation Competition. I gave it a simple name, the Aurora Breakfast Project. Leo was not pleased. "Why not call it the Awesome Leo Breakfast Project? It sounds way better." Maya rolled her eyes. "You might as well call it the Dumb Dog Project." While they bickered, they helped me collect data, conduct surveys, and run taste tests. I put Mia's logo and character designs on the first page of the proposal, and the judges' eyes lit up when they saw them. On the day of the internal defense, I stood on stage with a laser pointer, facing a panel of teachers and investment consultants. "This isn't just a theoretical exercise," I said calmly, flipping to the sales data slide. "The stall has been in stable operation for 17 days, with a daily repeat customer rate of over 60%, serving students from Northwood High and St. Andrews, as well as local office workers. Our goal is not a single stall, but a replicable, standardized breakfast model." The room was completely silent. I finished the last slide, put down the pointer, and looked at the judging panel. Ms. Peterson was the first to start clapping. When the results were announced, my project unsurprisingly took first place, advancing directly to the city-level finals. It was also on that day that I noticed Julian Vance standing at the back of the classroom, staring at the proposal on my desk for a long time. I pretended not to see him and casually put the file away in my drawer. That night, after I told Chloe what happened, she asked just one question: "Is the bait set?" "Yes," she smiled. "Then we just wait for the fish to bite." The fish bit faster than I expected. The very next morning, just as Mrs. Hayes was setting up the stall, inspectors from the health department arrived. They said they had received an anonymous tip accusing us of operating without a license and using substandard ingredients. Mr. Hayes' face paled, and he instinctively moved to shield his wife. I, however, was calm and simply handed over the permits and inspection reports I had prepared in advance. "Business registration, health permits, ingredient purchase orders, and food sample records are all here," I said steadily. "Take your time and look at whichever one you need." After reviewing everything, the inspector's attitude softened immediately. He even complimented us on how thorough our paperwork was. Once he left, Mr. Hayes was still a bit dazed. "When did you get all of this ready? After we clarified the procedures, didn't you and Mom go and file them yourselves?" I looked at him. "I just gave you a reminder." He paused, then said nothing more, just patted my shoulder firmly. That afternoon, Leo was laughing so hard he was slapping the table. "We found out who reported you." The anonymous call was made from the phone of Julian Vance's family driver. Maya sneered. "His petty tricks would only fool an idiot." I twirled my pen, my expression lazy. "No rush. Let them be happy for a couple of days." The city-level finals were scheduled for a week later at the City Convention Center. In attendance were not only school officials and judges, but also several companies interested in investing in campus dining projects. As soon as I entered the hall, I saw the Waltons. Arthur and Catherine were sitting in the front row, with a cool-faced Victoria beside them. Noah was dressed smartly, a competitor's name tag pinned to his chest. Leo cursed on the spot. "Him? He's not worthy." I glanced at the name of his project and smiled. The Walton Youth Nutrition Initiative. He couldn't even be bothered to change the name. "Julian really went all out," Maya said, crossing her arms. "He basically handed Noah your entire presentation, word for word." "It's fine," I said, adjusting my cuffs. "Saves me the trouble of figuring out how to get him on stage." Chloe was there today too. She wore a sharply tailored white suit, followed by her legal team and an assistant. Her presence was so powerful she looked less like an observer and more like she was there to buy the entire convention center. When Noah saw me, he actually had the nerve to approach. "Brother, if you withdraw now, I can still ask Mom and Dad to let you save some face," he said with a sincere expression. That little stall of yours will never amount to anything. I looked down at him and asked, have you memorized your script? Noah's expression stiffened. I smiled. Don't mess up your lines later. He walked away, his face grim. When the presentations began, Noah's group was scheduled before mine. He was clearly nervous when he got on stage, but since the script was already written for him, he managed to sound somewhat competent just by reading it. Julian sat in the audience, occasionally nodding at him as if to give him support, but he fell apart during the QA session. What is the data from your current pilot locations? A judge asked. Noah froze for a second. That will be gradually improved upon in the future. How do you control the raw material spoilage rate? A professional team will be responsible for that. How do you resolve the core conflict between delivery radius and heat retention time? Sweat started beading on his forehead. Finally, he could only look helplessly into the audience. Julian was about to stand up, but the host spoke first. I'm sorry, audience members are not allowed to answer for the presenter. The situation was incredibly awkward. When it was my turn to go on stage, the hall actually grew quieter. I clicked to the first slide of my PowerPoint. A plump little rice ball character popped onto the screen, with a small line of text underneath, illustration by Mia Hayes. A few soft chuckles rippled through the audience, and the atmosphere relaxed. This project wasn't conceived in a boardroom. I began, my voice steady. It started with a small stall less than 20 square feet. It started with the steam rising at 4:30 in the morning. It started with people rushing to school and work, just wanting a hot meal to start their day. Unlike Noah, I didn't waste time on empty concepts. I laid out the real data, the supply chain process, cost analysis, and expansion plans, slide by slide. When I reached the final slide, I pressed the remote, and the screen suddenly split in two. On the left were the timestamp of my original proposal submission, the source file records, and screenshots from my class presentation. On the right was a page from the project Noah had just presented. Even the typos were identical. The entire hall fell silent. I looked up at Noah, a slight smile on my lips. And now, I'd like to take the opportunity to answer another question. Why does the Walton family's project look so much like my proposal? Noah's face turned white. Julian shot to his feet. That's slander. Slander. I nodded. Perfect. Then let's get the full story. I signaled the technician to switch to the next slide. What appeared on the screen was no longer project data, but several internal emails and a diagram of financial flows. The sender of the first email was, unmistakably, Olivia Walton. The message was short, just one sentence. Kill the Hayes family's loans. I'll need their channels later. The hall erupted in an uproar. Arthur Walton leaped to his feet. Who gave you permission to show this? I ignored him completely and clicked to the next slide. The second slide showed the approval records for Victoria Walton's acquisition of the Hayes family's old logistics network. The third was a transcript of the recording from my meeting with her the previous night, with one line standing out in particular clarity. Sophia offending someone was just a pretext. The one who really made the move was Olivia. Every eye in the room turned to the Waltons. I stood on the stage, my voice not loud, but it carried clearly throughout the hall. 2 years ago, the Hayes family went bankrupt, not because Sophia did anything wrong. It was because Olivia Walton found out about the switched at birth truth first and, fearing I would return to the Hayes family, she deliberately targeted them. When Victoria found out, she didn't stop it. Instead, she took the opportunity to seize their distribution channels and logistics network. Today, the Walton family stands here with a stolen proposal, hoping to continue profiting. Unfortunately for them, I have no intention of letting that happen. Just then, the back doors of the hall opened. Chloe walked in with her legal team and handed several documents directly to the organizers and the judging panel. Lancaster Legal officially filed the materials this morning, she said calmly. The relevant Walton subsidiary is suspected of unfair competition, malicious suppression, and intellectual property theft. We are now requesting the immediate disqualification of their bid. Furthermore, Aurora Dining has completed the legal repurchase of the original Hayes logistics network and has signed a new partnership agreement with the Hayes family. With that one statement, she had effectively kicked the Waltons out of the game. Noah stood frozen, as if all the air had been knocked out of him. Julian's face was ashen. He wanted to say something, but his father pulled him back. The look Mr. Vance gave me was complicated. He had clearly realized that his son had picked a fight he couldn't win. Arthur Walton's expression was grim. Ethan, did you have to take it this far? I looked at him and suddenly found it laughable. Weren't you just as decisive when you gave me $500,000 and told me not to look back? I said calmly, I took that money to sever our ties. Today's accounting isn't about a family reunion with the Waltons. It's about settling the score for the Hayes family. Catherine's lips moved, as if for the first time, she wanted to say something conciliatory. but I didn't give her the chance. The final result was no surprise. The Waltons project was disqualified on the spot. My Aurora Breakfast project won first place in the finals and was successfully added to the pilot program list. Less than 3 days after the event, the relevant Walton subsidiary was placed under investigation. Both Olivia and Victoria were suspended from their positions by the board of directors. The Hayes family received a public apology, financial compensation, and the return of their distribution channels. To protect the corporation's reputation, the Walton family had to hold a press conference. I didn't go, I just watched a few clips on my phone. On camera, Arthur and Catherine were impeccably dressed, their expressions composed, but they couldn't hide their utter humiliation. They publicly admitted to the damages caused to the Hayes family years ago and announced their compensation and apology. The comment section was full of people enjoying the drama. I closed the video and went back to my homework. Ms. Peterson tapped her desk at the front of the room. "You're all seniors. What are you doing watching gossip? Get back to your work." The entire class immediately lowered their heads. Leo secretly passed me a note. It read, "Ethan, you're a legend." I casually wrote back 2 words, "Shut up." After the scandal blew up, the first one to break was Noah. He had no real skills to begin with and had only been able to act arrogantly at St. Andrews because of the Walton name. Now that his reputation was ruined and his backing was gone, no one in class was willing to play along with his act anymore. I heard he came looking for me once, waiting at the school gate for a long time. I didn't see him. Later, he was advised to withdraw from St. Andrews and transferred to a regular high school out of state. Before he left, Leo went to get the details and came back looking somber. I heard he cried a lot. I didn't even look up. What's that got to do with me? Julian Vance's fate wasn't much better. His actions, secretly recording videos, stealing the proposal, using the Waltons to pressure others, all came to light one by one, until even his own family couldn't stand it anymore. In a fit of rage, his father cut off all his resources and sent him abroad. Before he left, he came to the school to find me and asked if I had known all along. I looked at him and replied with a single sentence, "You give yourself too much credit." His face turned pale, then red, but in the end, he couldn't say a word. In the second semester of my senior year, the Hayes family's life changed almost daily. The single breakfast stall expanded to 3. After renting the warehouse, Mr. Hayes officially registered Aurora Breakfast as a brand. Mrs. Hayes still loved being on the front lines, making rice balls for the students by hand. She always said that watching the kids eat happily gave her a sense of peace. After Isabella's short series aired, it unexpectedly went viral. Her face was perfect for historical dramas, and her acting was natural. It wasn't long before new roles were offered to her. The first time the family saw her on TV and in short videos, Mia screamed so loudly she almost knocked over her water glass. After graduation, Sophia didn't go to work at a hospital. Instead, she was recruited by Samantha into her studio, specializing in wellness and dining spaces. One was a design expert, the other understood traditional medicine and functional pairings. They turned out to be an incredibly effective team. Later, the first official Aurora Breakfast storefront was a joint project between the two of them. As for Mia, she gained more and more confidence drawing packaging and merchandise for the family business, eventually diving headfirst into art. The year she took her high school entrance exams, she got into a prestigious art-focused high school. She waved her acceptance letter in front of me and jumped around 3 times. "Brother, I'm going to draw lots and lots of things for your company in the future." I ruffled her hair. "All right, I'll put it on your tab and pay you when you're grown up." Mia's eyes went wide. "How can you cheat your own sister out of her money?" The whole family laughed. That night at dinner, Mr. Hayes had a rare drink, and his face was flushed. He looked at me and suddenly said my name, "Ethan." I looked up. He was quiet for a moment, his voice a little hoarse. "I used to think you were too mature for your age, so much so that it was heartbreaking. Now, Dad just wants to tell you one thing. It's so good to have you home." The hand holding my chopsticks paused. Beside him, Mrs. Hayes's eyes were also red. Isabella gently touched my arm, as if to support me. I looked at them, a lump suddenly forming in my throat. After a few seconds, I lowered my head and, as I normally would, placed a piece of fish in Mrs. Hayes's bowl. "Mom, let's eat first." At that one word, the entire table fell silent. Mrs. Hayes stared for 2 seconds, and then tears streamed down her face. She was crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes, Mom will eat. Mom will eat." I turned my face away, feeling a bit awkward, but my ears were burning. When Chloe found out about it, she laughed at me on the phone for a long time. "So you finally came around and called her Mom?" "Yeah. So when do I get to hear a different title from you?" I leaned against the balcony of my dorm, letting the wind blow, and played dumb. "What different title?" The other end of the line was silent for 2 seconds. Then came her low chuckle. For example, honey, I nearly choked on the air. Chloe Lancaster, how have you gotten so shameless? I learned it from you, she said in a slow, deliberate tone. Why don't you practice a bit so you're not out of practice later? I didn't reply, but my ears burned even hotter. The day the college entrance exams ended, Chloe came to pick me up herself. She was leaning against her car, wearing a simple shirt and pants, but her face and her aura were still so striking that passers-by couldn't help but stare. I walked over and tossed my backpack right into her arms. She raised an eyebrow. Bullying me the moment your exams are over? Didn't you say you were my exclusive personal assistant? Chloe smiled, slinging the backpack over her own shoulder. Fine, top-notch service it is today. Where would the young master like to go? We can't get a marriage license yet, we're not quite old enough, I said, looking at her pointedly. How about you wait a little longer? She was clearly stunned for a moment, then the smile in her eyes deepened instantly. Ethan, she said my name softly, are you proposing to me? I guess so, I replied calmly. It's going to happen sooner or later anyway. Chloe stared at me for a long time, then suddenly wrapped her arms around my neck and kissed me, right there in front of everyone at the school gate. The crowd around us immediately erupted in cheers and whistles. The kiss made me take a step back. I steadied her by the waist and whispered, "You should behave yourself." "Too late," she murmured, her lips brushing against mine as she smiled. "I've been waiting for this day for a long time." I found out later that Maya had been secretly recording a video from behind us and had immediately sent it to Leo. Leo got so excited he almost sent the video to the entire class group chat. Later on, he and Maya, that bickering engaged couple, actually ended up becoming a real couple. At their engagement party, Leo got drunk, his face bright red, and insisted on hugging me while crying, saying I finally made him believe that arranged business marriages could have true love. I was so embarrassed I just turned and dumped him on Maya. During my college years, I studied while working with Chloe to grow Aurora. She handled the capital and overall strategy, while I focused on product and the supply chain. Many people were skeptical at first, thinking a high school kid from a wealthy family just got lucky and caught a trend. But after we opened our first store, established our first direct supply line, and developed our first standardized system, everyone was silenced. As for the Walton family, they managed to hold on to most of their assets, but they never returned to their former position of dominance. Victoria was transferred to an overseas branch. Before she left, she sent me a single email with just 2 words, "You won." I didn't reply. Olivia, on the other hand, sent me a collar, not for a person but for a dog. The note was very much in her style, saying the border collie was well behaved now and that I should come visit it abroad whenever I came to my senses. I returned the package unopened. Arthur and Catherine still tried to contact me occasionally, sometimes on holidays, sometimes under the pretext of business. I kept it strictly professional every time. Some ties, once broken, are broken for good. The year Chloe got pregnant, Mrs. Hayes was so happy she nearly threw the spatula across the kitchen, and Mia spent every day with her ear to Chloe's belly, seriously trying to figure out if it was a little brother or a little sister inside. I got a headache just watching them, but Chloe was perfectly calm. She could even review documents while grabbing my hand and placing it on her stomach. It moved. A tremor went through my palm, and my whole body froze. She looked up at me, a smile in her eyes. "What's wrong, Mr. Hayes? Getting nervous?" "No," I said stubbornly. But that night, I had insomnia, staring at the ceiling until 3 in the morning. Chloe rolled over and snuggled up to me, her voice thick with sleep. "If you don't get some sleep, you're going to collapse before the baby is even born. It's still a long way off." "Then what are you so worried about?" I was quiet for a moment, then pulled her a little closer. "It just doesn't feel real." Chloe let out a soft laugh and reached up to touch my chin. "What are you afraid of? Aren't you always so good at calculating everything?" I looked down at her. Her eyes were incredibly soft. "You don't need to calculate this time. From now on, you have me, you have our child, and you have a big family. No matter how you add it up, you can't lose." The day she went into labor, I truly understood for the first time what it felt like to have your palms go cold. The moment the delivery room doors closed, a whole line of people was standing outside. Mrs. Hayes stood with her hands clasped, praying. Mr. Hayes paced back and forth in the hallway. Isabella and Sophia brought me water and told me to sit down. Samantha kept saying, "It's just childbirth, don't be so dramatic," but she was so nervous her own leg was shaking. When Leo and Maya arrived with gifts, I didn't even have the energy to scold them. I don't know how much time passed, but finally, a nurse came out with good news. Fraternal twins, a boy and a girl, and mother and babies were safe and sound. When I went in, Chloe had just woken up. She was still a bit pale, and her hair was damp against her forehead, but when she saw me, a slow smile spread across her face. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice a little hoarse, "congratulations, you got it done in one go." I stood by the bed, a lump in my throat, and it took me a long moment to manage one sentence. Thank you for your hard work. The nurse brought the babies over, placing one in my arms and the other in hers. I held my daughter, my movements as stiff as if I were disarming a bomb for the first time. The son in Chloe's arms was quiet, his eyes still closed, only letting out soft whimpers. She looked at my terrified expression and couldn't help but laugh. Didn't you used to say you charged $5 an hour to talk? I looked down at her. The price has gone up. How much? I'll give you the rest of my life. Chloe's eyes suddenly reddened, but she still smiled and leaned in. I was holding our daughter, she was holding our son, and the two little ones were nestled between us. When Chloe lifted her head to kiss me, I instinctively tilted away, afraid of bumping the baby, which made her laugh out loud. Ethan, how did you get dumber after becoming a father? I leaned down and kissed her, my movements gentle. Outside the window, the sun was shining brightly, and from the doorway came the hushed, happy sounds of our family. Holding my child, kissing my love, I suddenly felt that all the things I had lacked in my life were finally, piece by piece, being restored.